Well, Lee, I'm excited to be here with you this morning for our Galactic prayer. We are in our 6 week intensive, and this has been amazing. Absolutely amazing. Brother is going to be a little late this morning, but he will be on with me this morning. I'm just stoked to be having this discussion about the reclamation of the family. It's what's at the core and the heart of Yah. It's what he created originally to house the blessing was the family. And it's one of the things that men get so messed up. When I say men, I mean mankind. Mankind gets so messed up. It's so convoluted. It's such a mess. But the Father's desiring to bring the family back into order, the family structure back into order. And it's going to take the sons of Yah, those that understand kingdom protocol, uh, um, kingdom assignment, those who understand the government of Yah to bring these things back in order, even as it was so from the beginning, where the gods began to bring things into order on the behalf of Yah. You know, we know that He's a collaborative God, and He desires His sons, whether we are uh, eternal sons already in the heavens, or we are in the earth, whether we are celestial or terrestrial. I guess that would be an easier way to say that. He desires the sons to continuously be at work on behalf of His government, doing His bidding and making sure that His expression is known because it is seen. And so that requires us uh, to take the responsibility of being active in our calling, active in our assignment. And that calls for us to know the assignment and to begin to identify blessings to all of those who are coming into the room. I see you, Elder Vicky. I see you, Ministry in Action. Love you guys. Thank you so much for being here this morning. And those who are in the room that are not visibly seen or having the conversation, if you are live now or you are on the replay, listen, I'm thankful that you were here, and feel free to share, to leave comments in the comment section, take notes. If you don't have your notebook, you guys know copious notes have always been a hallmark of this ministry. We need you to take copious notes. I need you not to just take what I'm saying, although this, what the Father's given me is revelation, and He's given me from, for a very, this is a, what do I want to call it? No, everything that the Father talks to us about is very specifically tailored based on who we are, our personality, who we are, and how we would communicate a thing. So He may, even though you get the identification of some things here, He may give you some more depth. You may be able to pull some more layers back, and then therefore you may form some more identification of some things. That is absolutely, that's absolutely in order, that you continue to peel back the layers of revelation that are given to you and that you verify these things. So I'm excited today. Like I told you, listen, about what we're doing today. We are dealing with supernal intellectual property. We've dealt with the revealing, and we'll talk again about the revelation of the diabolic intellectual property. And today we're going to add to that the spiritual, the supernal spiritual side of that, which is the supernal intellectual property. And this week we're going to be dealing with the reveal and the resounding. We've dealt with some things prior, and we're going to kind of go back over or rehearse some things that we've already dealt with. And I pray that you guys have taken the things that I've given you and begin to apply those things. I myself have been taking those things and applying those things, and I'm going back through those things. Even after I get off this live, I'm going back over those things, because we have to keep these things in front of us. I remember what the word to Yeshua, which is Joshua, yeah, he has the same name as the Mashiach, what the word was to him. It was, do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. In other words, there are some foundational things that when the Father gives them to us, these should be the things that we rehearse over and over and over again. You never arrive at a place where you don't need to rehearse what the Father is saying, because greater revelation is coming out. It's just like when you read the scripture, more revelation is coming out of what you've already read. Why? Because it's packed full of the revelation of who He is. It's packed full of His mind and His essence. It's packed full of all that He is. And so this is why we have to study the Word and become lifelong students of the word of Yah. We got to become students of who he is, students of how he moves, students of who Holy Spirit is, students of the Mashiach's purpose and assignment and who we are to be as a result of the prototype that was put before us. We've got to be lifelong students of our enemy, not just the external enemy, but the internal enemies, what I call the enemies, those things that are internal that come from familial bloodline iniquity and all kinds of things. These are things that a lot of people do not discuss. We hear a lot of discussion about deliverance, quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes, the concept or the conversation about deliverance. But until we really understand where the need for deliverance comes from, then can we really have authentic deliverance? Because one of the things that the master would say to people that he would heal, that he would bring deliverance to, is go and sin no more. That's one of the things. And then there was a classification of people or a group of people that had not sinned, but what they were processing through was for the glory of Yah, that Yah might be glorified, that the people might see something. And there were often crowds that were gathered to see these specific deliverances, and people were asking questions because they only knew one side of the matter. That a lot of times the reason why people are caught in these situations where they've got to be loosened from is because of sin. But there are situations where there was no sin and it was just to be a situation that would be to the glory of Yah. This is why the Bible declares that we should in everything give thanks, because this is Yah's will concerning us. Why do we give thanks in everything? I didn't say for everything, but I said in everything. Why? Because we understand outcomes, which brings me to a conversation that the Father keeps having with me that I must say to you right now, that I must release to you, because a lot of people have been struggling with, well, what are the next moves? What am I supposed to do next? How do I move and what do I do? And the Father's been saying for the last couple of weeks to me concerning the people of Yah, understand the process of the end from the beginning. If you understand the process of the end from the beginning, we use it in business. When you are projecting something in business, when you're projecting income or revenue, when you're projecting the business outcome, when you're projecting what the business should look like, you're projecting it from the end of a thing. And so what you have to begin to do in this hour is identify what the Father has given you as the visible picture, the imagery of the end. So if you're looking at the end, right, you don't have to worry about the middle. If you're looking at the end, what you're going to do now is reverse engineer from the end place, because how you get to the end place, right, is a matter of the process that is necessary to get there. So like in business, right? If the end is a specific revenue goal, if the end is a specific email list, if the end is a specific thing in the business, then I have to, from that ending, begin to craft or put together what I need to do in order to get to that ending. And this is how this works. This is how the master would identify. I only say what my Father is saying. I only do what I see my Father doing. Why? Because the Father gave the blueprint from the beginning. He gave the end from the beginning, the end at the beginning. That is his MO. That is how he moves. And when you are acquainted intimately with the movement of Yah, then you begin to function and to operate exactly like he operates. I hope y'all got that. That is a nugget for this week for you to identify some things in an even greater way. How do I achieve this? How do I acquisition this? How do I do this? It's about the end from the beginning. And you've got to begin to see the end as he has spoken. And you got to begin to have those mind movies, those spiritual mind movies that he gives us so clearly when he says a thing. It's the same thing that happens anytime somebody says a thing. You begin to visualize what they're saying. Somebody could have communication with you and you were not there, but if they're telling you the story, then you're visualizing. You are having uh, 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 visual, what's the word I want to use here? You're having visual sessions around what they're saying in order to grasp the context or the content of what's being said. So this is really important that you identify with this. We're going to reveal and resound. This is week 3 of Galactic Prayers, 6-week intensive. And so we're going to dive in to a couple of things this morning. I want to ask you first, how have you been enjoying the series? How have you been enjoying the intensive? Let me know in the chat room. Give me some feedback on the intensive and how you've been enjoying it, how it's been impacting you. Whether you're on Facebook Live or you are on YouTube, definitely like. If you care to share, do so. Don't be stingy. We all need to hear what heaven about these things, because these things are what or that we're in. You know, before I jumped on, I began to think about how children in school used to do these. Oh my goodness, I knew what they were called before I just said it. It's about relevant news, right? I don't remember exactly what they called it off the top of my head anymore, but it would be, what's relevant in the news kind of thing, and they'd have to write that out. But what began to um, be impressed upon my heart this morning was the things that are relevant concerning the news and having understanding. Because, see, once you have understanding, spiritual understanding of things, then there's a greater clarity from a natural perspective. There's things that just don't move you, there's things that just don't bother you because you have a foundation that is sure. And that sure foundation allows you to understand the heart of Yah and his heart towards you and what his intention is towards you. So nothing else really matters at that point, right? But it is worthy of understanding. There is a worthiness or relevance in understanding or seeing or identifying what's going on, but you don't have to search it out. Really, it searches you out. And that's the truth of the matter. I don't really look at the news. I don't really watch all of the things that are happening right now in the earth. It finds me. Somehow it finds me. So this morning, a situation was brought up. It was brought before me. And all I could hear as I was walking to the bathroom was financial reset. Well, these are things that we've been talking about. These things are not new. These are things that we've been talking about. And so this is not a new conversation, but the reason why it was a pre-conversation, the reason why the Father began to have the conversation with us maybe 5 years ago, even greater, some of these conversations 10 years ago, was just like the Master said to the disciples, I'm telling you these things because when they happen, you will know that I've had these conversations already with you. So you'll kind of be able to identify yourself. You know, how you're in the mall or you're in a place and the sign is there, the kiosk is there for you to be able to identify where you're located and proximity to all of the other places that are in that space. So it has a little mark and it says, you are here, right? So that's just what the prophetic word is about. That's just what the Father gives us these pre-conversations before things happen about, which is very prophetic. This is why he gives us that, so that when we arrive at that point, we say, okay, we've had this conversation. This is where we are. You are here. Okay. So now let's move, because we know what to do now that we are here, because the conversation has already been had. And that's one of the things that the Master said to the disciples. Said, listen, I'm telling you these things so you're not in shock, so that you're not, amazed by whatever's going on. You're not in the know. You know these things are coming because I've told you that they're coming. So financial reset is inevitable. They've been attempting for years, and I don't even want to say. I know it's been quite a while since the credit card came on the scene and all of these digitized means of things, and then we went through the phases of the digital age of monetization, which would have been starting with credit cards, and then it went on to cryptocurrency, and now we're getting ready to do this reset. We don't know what this is exactly going to look like, but I promise you, if we are following the protocols of heaven, if we're doing the things that the Father has commanded us to do, we are positioned, we are okay, we're fine, and we will move forward. But the goal is to properly position ourselves so that we reap the benefits of the shift. And this is one of the things that a lot of people miss. A lot of churched people, CHURCHED, churched people or religious people, they miss these things because we've only been identifying with just going to church, going to a building and having this systemized setup, but nobody is really training to send people out to do the work, and nobody is really training to identify who we are and what our purpose is here in the earth, what our assignments are. Nobody's really training what it means to occupy until the coming, occupy until the arrival of things. Nobody understands those things because they're not communications to children of Yah. They're not communications in these institutions, if that makes sense. So it's really important that we understand right now that positioning is everything. And this is one of the reasons why I believe the Father's having this conversation, because the family unit is the house of the blessing. It is the house of the blessing. There is no blessing without family. There is no true, authentic, eternal blessing without family. And we're going to name some people today, and we're going to name some things, and you'll understand even better why I'm saying what I'm saying, the way that I'm saying it, because the family structure is the house. It's like the trust is the house of all of the assets, right? So the family unit is where the assets of blessing, the asset called blessing, is housed. Okay, if that makes sense. Let me read what you're saying down here. And anybody, go ahead and comment. Ministry in Action says you're definitely onto something with this process. I'm a woman. If wanting results and wanting them right away, I'm starting to see how God works even more because that's awesome. That is awesome. I'm glad to hear that. There is process. And I've heard of late that, people are talking against process, but process doesn't have to be prolonged. I believe process is simply prolonged because we lack the understanding, we lack the information. It's an ignorance that causes delay. Okay, ignorance causes delay, and sometimes that delay, that ignorance is necessary because there are things that and so I don't say that in a derogatory way or a negative way. There are things that you must learn in order to position yourself properly for what is to come. And so that would be a reason for a delay, for you to properly be positioned to be the person or to become the person that is worthy of, and I say worthy of intentionally, the next place that you're going to. So it's like pre-qualification, right? With a credit card or a loan or anything else, there's a pre-qualification process. And of course, we know that, everybody says you're pre-qualified, but that's based on the fact that you have the potential to qualify for this thing, but you still have to position yourself in order for the pre-qualification to be a qualification, if that makes sense. So I'm excited today about what we're getting ready to get into. Let me pull up some things here. And let's kind of go over a couple of things. Like I said, I pray that you guys are utilizing the information that I'm giving you. I believe that this information is integral. I believe it's very relevant for now. I believe the Father is speaking to us on this level intentionally and purposefully to position us for all of the things that are to come. Don't get your panties all in a ruff or your drawers all in a bunch over the things that you're hearing in the news outlets, et cetera, et cetera. Just know that your focus should be the things of Yah, the kingdom of Yah. And so when I say that, I'm not saying have your head stuck in the Bible or have your head stuck in the sand. That's not what I'm saying, because that's a church concept, a church model. What I'm saying, or a religious model, what I'm saying is that you need to be aware and in tune to what heaven is saying concerning your life right now, because that'll help you identify what is going on in the earth. If you have not discerned who you are and discerned your assignment and discerned your purpose, then you will not be able to discern what's going on in the earth right now, because you were born for this moment. You understand what I'm saying? So because you were born for this moment, then understanding your assignment and your purpose and understanding the end of the thing, your destined places, then that is going to help you identify what's really going on, because you're an answer to whatever the issue is. You're an answer to the objection that's in the earth. You're an answer to the issue. And so this is why the word declares that the whole earth is groaning. The earth is groaning. We're talking about the living creature called the earth. Everything in the earth, all of creation is groaning and waiting on the manifestation for the sons of Yah, waiting on the manifestation of the sons of Yah, for the sons of Yah to be properly positioned to be in that space of recreating, like from the beginning, declaring a thing, adjudicating a thing, bringing judgment on things and justice to things. This is what the earth is waiting for, okay? And so that starts with small things, but we've talked about those things. Let me get into this. We're in Galactic Prayer Week 3, Reveal and Resound. And the first week we talked about the original blueprint of family and Abba's intention in establishing this foundation as a house of the blessing. We dealt with the family scroll. the eternal books of heaven, and how we deal with what others wrote, and how we also become the scribes for generations to come. This is some of the stuff that was introduced. So we dealt with words, we dealt with sound frequency, the things being written, read, and declared. Okay, really important to identify with that. And so, what I want to talk about real briefly is something else that we discussed, or something else that I alluded to in the first week, which was um, intellectual property, right? Diabolic intellectual property in particular, but I also mentioned the spiritual intellectual property, or the supernal intellectual property. So let's go there for a minute, because I will give you the definitions again for diabolic intellectual property, which is dip, and then supernal intellectual property, which is sit. I think the Father is so amazing how he does these things. It's so absolutely amazing. So when we're dealing with supernal intellectual property, SIP for short, in the spirit realm, you must understand that thoughts are technologies and ideas are structures. So everything spiritual has an architecture. Every pattern has a source. And so when we're dealing with supernal, referred to that in the first video as divine intellectual property or divine IP, it's revealed through scrolls. It's revealed through dreams. It's revealed through words that are given you, visions, prophetic insight, and these are the blueprints, right? But diabolic intellectual property is implanted through your trauma, through familial traditions, whether they are religious or familial family traditions. It's implanted through seduction, things that you have encountered that seduced you into spaces. And now there's been some kind of trade-off or some kind of contract that's been made unbeknownst to you, right? It's built, the diabolic IP or intellectual property is built through deception. It's also built through vain philosophy, okay? Here's an insight for you, or a quote I want to share with you. Prayer without identification of the system that's behind the prayer may treat symptoms, but never collapse structures. And one of the things that we were vehemently encouraged to do as sons of Yah, we see it all throughout the original conversation, which you guys call the Old Testament, tearing down altars, right? We see it, the collapse of the structures. We see it even over into the new conversation or the new revelation of the old structure. We see it. Paul went into regions and collapsed structures. He collapsed systems. It wasn't just about tearing down the physical altars. The physical altars were torn down in the Old Testament as a type and shadow of the altars that would be torn down in the New Testament, which would actually be the system of things. Okay, and so when we look at this, this leads us to week 2, where we dealt with the family standard. The actionable emblem. We dealt with the standard, what a standard is, and we saw that it was the emblem that was on the actual flag. So this was something that was physical. This was something that was visual. And what was its importance? It was to identify the standard or the assignment of the family. And so what we discussed in identifying the assignment of the family was that you would then, after identifying the assignment of the family, going through the prompts that I gave you and the information that I gave you, and then seizing the control of the family narrative back from the diabolic intellectual property, back from diabolic nature, okay? Taking them out, taking the family out of this place of dip and taking them into sip, right? And so there were images, there were actionable frequencies, divine pivoting. We talked about the pivot a little bit, which we might talk about a little bit today because pivot is so important. You being the divine pivot, you being the person in the family that is the divine pivot of the family to bring the family back to Yah. So something was written or drawn, or there was a brand that is issued concerning the family assignment. It's a brand, right? So in that, let's talk about the architecture of diabolic intellectual property. The primary sources of diabolic intellectual property, or DIP, are fallen thrones, regional principalities, family altars, institutional blueprints. And here are some examples of that. We know that the Tower of Babel, Genesis chapter 11, unified agreement on a distorted design. They unified agreement. These people were in unity. They were in agreement, harmonious agreement. We see the same thing in Acts chapter 2, just not diabolically, but eternally, on the righteous side of things. These sons followed the instruction of the Mashiach, who was a blueprint, who was a prototype, went into this room they call the upper room, and waited for the presence of the Holy Spirit to arrive, because this would be an indwelling that would give them a capability, an ability to actionably express the very essence of who Yah was, even if they weren't speaking in their own language, even if it was somebody that the barrier was a language barrier, right? And I find it fascinating, because one of the things that was at the Tower of Babel was the confusion of the language. We just came out of Pentecost, right, or Shavuot, and the thing that happened in the new conversation was the revision, or the restoration of the language in an effort to be able to declare even to those who did not have the same language, that breaking the barriers. Okay. Jezebel system, the Jezebelic system, is another example of the architecture of dip. Okay. It's institutionalized manipulation being passed off as prophetic authority. This is very serious. This is the time that we're living in. And Jezebel, again, is not just a female as a person, but it is a spirit that is manipulative and controlling in an effort to silence the prophetic authority. And so you got to be very careful and very mindful of what's working in you. Even when you hear the word of Yah, you got to be mindful that you are not operating from a Jezebelic spirit, because a lot of people are very skittish about prophecy because they have been mishandled. So you got to be mindful that everybody is not mishandling you. That is not Yah's goal. That is not his purpose. You come into the spiritual intelligence of what things are. And once you step into the spiritual intelligence of what a thing is, the prophecy, what prayer, what all these things are, then nobody can any longer deceive you in those areas. So you don't have to be afraid to hear the word of Yah. You don't have to be afraid of a prophetic word anymore. You can now stand flat-footed and understand, I have been deceived in this area, but I'm not going to live my whole life skittish and moving around, walking on eggshells when somebody's got a word for me, because the enemy will use this to keep people from coming into their destined place, from actualizing what is on the heart of Yah, because they cannot hear the word of Yah through the prophet of Yah, if that makes sense. I hope you guys are gathering this. Another blueprint, or another source, dealing with the architecture of dip, another archetype of that would be Herod. This is a political dominion that's seeking to silence generational deliverers, and we're dealing with that every day. The Herods, and we can get into that in another conversation, what the understanding or the meaning of Herod is, right? Very important for us to understand the king thing. Its goal is just its political positioning for the purpose of controlling the next generation of deliverers. And we see that even with Herod the Herods kept calling for the death of the male children in a chosen space, right? Why? Because they wanted to seize the authority, to seize the history, to seize all of the culture of of a people that were chosen. And we see this every day. Right now, we see it today. This whole seizure of the culture, seizure of identity, seizure of nation or national histories. Okay, we see it right now. And we've been seeing it. It's not new because, we've got a new president. It's not new because Trump is in office. People only see what they want to see. This thing has been going on before he even sat in the seat. And understanding, you must understand, I say this all the time, that seat is just a puppet seat. It's not a seat of control. Whatever is happening through that seat is what is intended through that seat by those that are in authority. Okay, so there is a blueprint, there is a plan, and we'll go over that in a second. There is a plan, and the plan will be followed no matter who's sitting in a seat. Okay, no matter who's sitting in a seat. If there is a political positioning, it will be followed, and they will do good cop, bad cop, quote unquote, because none of it's good. And put it in front of the people as good cop, bad cop, so that you'll begin to say, well, when this person was this, and when that person was that, and this person is doing, all of that is Hollywood, all of that is acting, all of that is for the purpose of having people in an uproar and having them distracted Dis, meaning divided from the reality that we're living in and the reality of assignment that is right now, in order to position us to seize or to acquisition, whatever Yah is calling us to acquisition, whether it's territory, lands, nations, whatever it is. We can't get there focused on the distractions, what is taking us away from. We've talked about the family unit too. And since I mentioned distraction, that's very important, even as we're dealing with the family unit, to understand that the adversary uses distractions. The thing that divides families is distractions, and distractions come through these the principalities or the primary sources of dip. Diabolic intellectual property is um, uh, issued, and then people are distracted from all the things that they need to be doing, even familiarly. They're distracted, and so now they're not accomplishing the assignment, and then everything is on delay, everything is on pause. It's amazing to see how these things are at work, right? So today we're going to deal with revealing and resounding and pivoting. Okay, we're activating the antagonist of dip, which is SIP, right? Supernal intellectual property. And we're going to align ourselves with weeks 1 and 2. We saw the writing, we saw the declaration, we saw the decree. That's basic. Now we're coming into this alignment. It's so funny because I'm hearing things behind me. It sound like I was hearing voices behind me, like, who's talking to me? And I know it's not another phone. So let's keep moving. Okay, so let's define prayer. Now, if you got anybody that's been with me for any length of time, you know that I have several running definitions of prayer. It just depends on who I'm talking to and the context in which the communication is happening. So the way I'm defining prayer today, you may have never heard me, except for the last couple of weeks, define it this way, because this is just another layer of what it is, okay? But prayer is the sound of God's at work. How he did that. The sounds of God's or Elohim at work, declaring, manifesting, setting order, reestablishing, engaging, and recreating or recreating. What prayer is about establishment. What prayer is about. And when we're reestablishing something, that often means something else has to be demolished. And so prayer is also a demolition tool as well. But one of the things that is really crucial or critical about this conversation when we're dealing with reclaiming the family is going back to Genesis. If we go back to Genesis, we will see this conversation that opens up the book. And it opens up the book this way because it is foundational for how we are to operate as sons of Yah, as gods or Elohim in the earth, right? And that is to hover over the face of waters, over the face of a thing. How do we hover over the face of a thing? We're hovering, or we are identifying, we're looking at, but while we're looking, we've already got an established movement in our head. We've already got an established outcome in our head. And so this is what was happening. Good morning, brother. I see you. Brother Greg, that's my brother. We have an established assignment. And this is what the Elohim did from the beginning. It says, and Elohim created. This is a recreation. It's not a creation. Yah did create the heavens and the earth. But in the recreation of things, he utilizes his workforce. The same way that right now, we as the sons of Yah in the earth are his workforce to do the work of the king, to establish, to reestablish, to create. All of these things are our responsibility. And so when we look at prayer, and we see that it is the sound of God's or Elohim at work. What are we doing? We're at work declaring something. We're at work decreeing something. We're manifesting something. We're establishing the order of our king. We're reestablishing. We're engaging. We're recreating. This is important, okay? So let's define dip. I'm going to give you the core definition of that again, because I want this to be settled in your heart, settled in your mind, what this is that the Father's talking about. When we talk about diabolic intellectual property, this is a systematized, inherited, notice what I'm giving you, system and inherited. So where do systems come from? They come from repetition. Systems begin with whatever the perspective is. Systems begin with whatever a culture is, which is coming out of culturally reinforced thought structures. Okay, they could be attached to most of the time they're attached to world systems and how the world system is operating, and that's passed down through family systems. Okay, ideologies, designs, and technologies that are authored by rebellious spiritual architects or archetypes. We can call them that. The watchers, the diabolic watchers. They are enforced by dominion agents to distort divine order or to distort supernal or eternal order and replicate alternative realities through human consent. I keep telling you, there's nothing that the adversary can do. I don't understand this identification of the adversary, whether it be Satan or devil. I don't understand this classification that's been given where he is being given all of this power and we're supposed to be afraid because of backlash and all of these other things. No, he needs consent to function in the way that he functions. Okay, he's going to need consent. Now, are there some overriding principles that we can identify with that Yah will establish or put us in position to be dealt with? Yes, but that dealing with or being put in that position is for us to be purged, us to be purified, us to be refined. Okay, I can use two examples really quickly that'll help you understand that outside of what I just talked about, being through human consent, and these two situations will clarify for you. This is the other or the only other option to being dealt with systematically through diabolic intellectual property. Okay, or dealt with through from adversaries, and that would be Job, Yob, right? Or the Mashiach in the wilderness. And of course, there are other classifications that we can use or situations that we can use, but I'm going to use those two for the moment because they didn't have any control over the test that was coming to them, the trying of who they were, the trying of who they were to become. They had no control over that. They were led of the Holy Spirit, and the master was led of the Holy Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted, to be tested by what was in him. If there was to be a testing. So I tell you guys all the time, I have two things that I deal with very distinctly. Devil is not external. Satan, the Satans are external. Those diabolic spirits that are principalities, thrones, powers, that kind of thing, that's an external thing. But the internal thing for me is devil. What is that? That's an adversary, an internal adversary that is pre-programmed by diabolic intellectual property, that's systemized, inherited, or culturally reinforced thought structures, ideologies, and designs and technologies that are authored by what's external. But however, these are things that we have to master. Okay, these are things that we have to make determinations about that are internal, that came from somewhere, that now have structures and are established, whether they're walls or fortresses. These are things that are established internally that we must decide. And so, how do we get to the place of decision? Because the Father begins to reveal that you have fortresses, you have walls, that there are things that are familiar to you or familiar to you, familiar spirits, things that are familiar to you that you're operating in that are in opposition to who the Father is and what he's desiring for you or what your assignment is. Okay, so I hope that was clear. Let's define SIP before we jump into today. When we deal with supernal intellectual property, this is divinely authored thought structures, eternally authored thought structures. We're talking about righteous, divine, righteous, eternal. Okay. Well, ain't nothing unrighteous eternal anyway. So eternal authored thought structures, blueprints, decrees, patterns, and technologies that are released from heaven to be stewarded by sons on earth. These are encoded in scrolls, in our familial scrolls, the family scrolls. Remember, we talked about that week 1. If you missed that, you need to go back to that. We talked a little bit about it in week 2. These are revealed to us or are encoded in our dreams through prophetic word or prophecy and scripture. And these things serve to govern righteous design, function, and legacy across generations. Got that? Here are the characteristics of SIP or supernal intellectual property. These intellectual properties are authored by Yah. And I probably need to give y'all a running definition of what intellectual property is. And a lot of these things I find amazing because the Father is running together side by side business, his divine business structure, and his spiritual setup, his spiritual architecture, all in one. Okay. So understanding what intellectual property is going to be next. Just give me a second. I'm going to walk you through it. If you're here, say something. I appreciate you being here, whether you're in the room or outside of the room, or whether you're on YouTube or Facebook. I'm thankful for you being here today, and I pray that you are impacted by what's being discussed this morning. So, SIP, Supernal Intellectual Property, is authored by Yah. It's carried through scrolls, prophetic insight, vision, and righteous bloodlines through dreams as well, right? We just talked about that. It's released by revelation. It's written by scribes and enacted by obedient sons. It's activated in sons to be enacted by us, okay? It always aligns with divine order, fruitfulness, according to the scripture, not just busy work, fruitfulness, justice, holiness, and truth. And it requires discernment and obedience to retrieve and to enforce. Okay, I'm going to give you some examples of SIP. Genesis chapter 1, creation as the original scroll. There was a divine architecture for life, order, and legacy. Right there in Genesis chapter 1. That was one of the examples of what supernal intellectual property looks like. And we're going to do intellectual property in a minute. Habakkuk chapter 2, write the vision, make it plain. This is a scribal function, right? He sees something, he's dealing with something internally, and the Father begins to deal with him on how he needs to position himself in order for the next move. Remember, we were originally talking about how to re-engineer a thing, how to start at the end. When you want to deal with what's in the middle, you start at the end. You re-engineer it so you know what are the components, what are the processes, what do I need to do in order to get to the end. Y'all are quiet in this room. Are y'all being blessed by this? Put a 5 in the room if you're being blessed, and that's why you're so quiet. I had to pause for the cause. Holy Spirit told me years ago, he said, one of the reasons why people are quiet when you teach is not because of anything else, it's because they're listening. And so I appreciate the listen. I really do. Put a 5 in the room if this is blessing you and if you're gaining spiritual insight and revelation from what's being shared with you this morning. A 5. Put a 5 in the room. I'll wait. I will wait on you guys to put 5s in the room. Yep. Put a 5 in the room. Thank you, Father. Put a 5 in the room. There we go. Yeah, I know it's a little delay, so I'm going to wait so I can make sure that a couple of you guys are actually being blessed by this and you're hearing this clearly. And like I said, I pray. Okay, I know you're taking notes, Elder. That's what you do. I love it. Revelation chapter 5. I'm waiting on those 5s. Let me know. I know you guys are taking notes, some of you. And some of you may be driving. Got you. Thank you, brother. Right. You've been saying that for years, Elder. Need to learn shorthand. That's some funny stuff. Gregory, do you have a question, brother? If you have a question, I see a hand. If you got a question, you can feel free to put it in the chat. I'll pause for the cause. We're going back to examples of SIP or supernal intellectual property. I'm waiting to see if my brother Gregory has a question. If he does, guys, excuse me. I'm not meaning to pass that along. Some of you are on your way to work. Don't inherit the yawn in this moment. Okay. Oh, that's a high 5. Boom, got it. Okay. Awesome. The high 5. All right. So Revelation chapter 5, scrolled and sealed until the worthy Lamb breaks it open. This is a governmental release of destiny. This is another example of supernal intellectual property. What is contained in the scroll, and somebody has to utilize it. Somebody has to open it in order to release government, in order to release destiny. It has to be open. Jeremiah chapter 1, vision given and commanded to be written and fulfilled. This is supernal intellectual property to nations. Jeremiah had this. Paul was another. John was another that dealt with supernal intellectual property that was given to not just an individual, but given to a nation or given to nations, right? So let's deal with SIP versus DIP comparison real quick. Supernal intellectual property versus diabolic intellectual property. And I'm going to go to the definition of intellectual property. Y'all remind me to go there. I just want to give you the aspect of both and then show you source and who carries it, what the function is and what it requires and what the fruit of it is. Okay? So when we're dealing with supernal intellectual property, it's Yah given. It's Yah origin. Yah is the origin. He's the source. Okay? It's originated by him. But with diabolic intellectual property, it's rebellious architects or fallen thrones. Okay? That's where that's coming from. It's carried by, with spiritual intellectual property, it is carried by, and I'm going to go through spiritual intellectual property first instead of flopping back and forth because I have it in a chart. Supernal intellectual property is sourced by Yah, is Yah is the source. It's carried by sons. That could be prophets, apostles, pastors, teachers, leaders. And I know most people, I'm not none of those. Yes, you are. If you're a son of Yah, you're one of those. You just don't know which one you are yet. So that means you're in the stage of identifying or revelation of who you are. And maybe there are many others that are past the revelation stage are now in the training stage or the training phase to actually be launched or to be sent out for the work. Okay. The function of supernal intellectual property is to establish kingdom order. And what it requires is obedience, discernment, and stewardship. The fruit of supernal intellectual property, or SIP, is righteousness, multiplication, and legacy. The purpose is to continue it through generations. We're on every Wednesday currently. Okay. So when we look at the side of diabolic intellectual property, or DIP, the source is rebellious architects or fallen thrones, right? It's carried out by principalities, false systems, cultural agents. Its function is to distort and delay kingdom purpose. And it requires agreement. And that could be through ignorance or silence, okay? And we know what the fruit of that is. It's separation, it's division, it's separating you from the will of Yah. And it delays destiny. It's a destiny destroyer, actually. Now, in some cases, it delays. And when delay comes into place, it's simply a son that's not understanding the way. But when it's destiny destruction, it's a son that has been revealed the way, but they're just kind of doing it the way they want to do it. They're not paying attention because they've been caught up in the hype of whatever the system is got going on. And because while they are distracted, their destiny is being destroyed. Okay. So let's deal with section 3, how DIP infects families. The family is infected through inherited logic. This could be how you deal maritally. This could be how you raise children. This could be how you do business, whether you're an employee or a business owner or an entrepreneur. This could be how you deal with money. Okay. How DIP infects families is broken speech patterns. Okay. Things are not complete. Things are partially discussed. Okay. Things are not revealed because they're taboo. All right. Relational contracts is another way that DIP infects families. Soul ties. What are you connected to? What are you covenanted with? Have those ties been broken? It can also be infected. Dip also infects families through abusive coverings. Oh, yeah, I had to share that one. Very important that we understand what we're connected to on all levels, including spiritually. What are we connected to? Because that definitely will affect us and infect the family line, affect the generations, affect legacy. Also, unchallenged altars is how diabolic intellectual property infects the family. We see things, but we don't say nothing. We just go on about our day. And sometimes the reality is we see it, but we like it. Ooh, that's hard. And I'm writing some stuff right now that's just, it's hard. Um, I don't mean it to be harsh. It's not harsh, but it is hard. It is challenging. The things that I'm writing right now that'll be released short, challenging to men. I'm writing some very challenging things to women. I'm writing some very challenging things about the kingdom versus the church culture. I'm writing very challenging things, but the reason why they have to be challenging is because they have to change us. It's not meant to destroy, but to change or to impact change. And real conversations have to be had in order for real outcomes to be received, right? So here's a key activation for you. Sons have to trace. You have to, as a son, trace not just what is happening, because we've gone through the process. What is it? Write it down. Okay, write what you see it as. Write what Yah is saying. Write what heaven has declared over your family line, right? So you don't just see what's happening, but you got to identify who wrote that pattern. You got to identify that. Who wrote that pattern? Where is this pattern coming from? And it's a thing that is in alignment with discernment that a lot of people don't take the time to have. You're not understanding where things are coming from. So you're just going along to get along, or you're going along because it makes you feel good in the moment. And if you go along to get along because it makes you feel good in the moment, or it strokes an ego, or it strokes some part of you that needs to be recognized or validated or whatever, you're going down a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. It really is. And that's a dangerous place because, again, that's that consent that's being given for diabolic nature to function and to rehearse and to animate you in whatever ways they desire to animate you for the purpose of their assignment, right? Good God Almighty. Okay. I was distracted. I was divided. Okay. Let me go to the opening real quickly. Let me go to the opening. And it looks like I'm going to move pretty swiftly through here. I don't know if brother's going to make it before I get off, but we're going to keep going. Let me go to the opening for today. Y'all all right in the room? Let me know you're all right. I'll go to the opening. There we go. Definitely, if you're on YouTube, like the video. If you are in Facebook, do the same. Do the same. Forgive me for yawning. I've been up very early. So we're activating supernal intellectual property, and we're exposing diabolic IP and activating supernal intellectual property. Okay, so we're in a prophetic pivot point. Awesome. We're in a prophetic pivot point. An hour where what has been hidden is being revealed, and what has been now resounding. Definition of intellectual property. Okay. Heaven has released a measurement. There's an accounting of righteousness and unrighteousness. And by divine calculation, we have entered into the time of retroactive recompense. Anybody in this room know what retroactive pay is? Retroactive means I'm going back now. We're going back to pick up where things started, and that's where you're going to get paid. Anybody that's ever gotten retroactive pay, you love it because it went past the place where you entered and past the place where you entered a certain point and went back. If it was some kind of policy or whatever, whatever it could be. Retroactive means it goes back. Matter of fact, let me bring up a definition of retroactive, and then I'll give you guys the definition of intellectual property. Okay. What retroactive means? It means taking effect from a date in the past. That's a very simple definition. I love it. It's accounting or it's extending in scope or effect to a prior time or to a condition that existed or originated in the past. Retroactive, okay, from a date in the past. Now let's go real quick to intellectual property. Intellectual property. I'll do this. I think Wikipedia is going to have a good definition for it right now. It's not hard. It's hard to mess up that. I like this definition. Intellectual property refers to creations of the mind, such as inventions, literary and artistic works, designs and symbols, names and images used in commerce. And so we know that there is a currency of heaven. There's a commerce that happens on a spiritual level. And so the IP is protected in law. Okay. I'm going to keep reading it because I want you to understand this. Intellectual property is protected. Where is it? It's protected in law by statutes and all kinds of things. So what would be under intellectual property or types of property would be like patents. And patents are exclusive rights that are granted for an invention. Okay. And generally speaking, a patent provides the patent owner with the right to decide how or who can use the invention. Okay. And in exchange for that right, the patent owner makes technical information about the invention publicly available in the published patent document. So then you got copyrights, which are legal terms that are used to describe the rights that creators have over their literary and artistic works. Okay. And this copyright, these works are covered by copyright range from books to music to paintings to sculpture and films to computer programs to databases to advertisements to maps and technical drawings. So why are you giving us this, Apostle? Well, I'm giving you this because it's very important that you understand the age that we're in and that the Father has declared that we are to occupy until he comes. Occupy until he's occupied means do trade and commerce. I want to break that down for you. It means to do trade and commerce. That means it's something you need to know. It's something that you need to be researching. It's something that you need to identify with to position yourself properly. And one of the things that I can give you to go and really do a deep dive on is the conversation with the talents. Okay. Go and do a deep dive on that parable. Go and do a deep dive about the good man and how his possession of this land and all of these things afforded him the ability to put in the hand of 3 servants what they call talents, which is a financial gifting to do something with. And when he came back, he had an expectation of it. And that's such a spiritual or prophetic significance for us right now. Okay, trademarks. A trademark is a sign capable of distinguishing the goods or services of one enterprise from those of other enterprises. Trademarks date back to ancient times when artisans used to put a signature or a mark on their products. So you see me often putting trademark by some of the things that I'm saying because heaven has given me these things. They are intellectual property, supernal intellectual property that's been given to me to steward. And so even in some things that you'll see coming up with the School of the Spirit, which I've been talking about for 10 years, I have the curriculum established for that. I'm ready to begin to finalize some of those things so that we can roll that out. But you'll notice that a lot of things have trademark by it. A lot of things are housed in trust because my trust owns the intellectual property of those things. So it's about identifying what the Father is saying, what he desires to be done, protecting what's being done, increasing what's been given, you know what I'm saying, and making sure that it has the proper vehicle to protect it so that it's not just taken. So another thing that would be under types of intellectual property would be industrial designs. And industrial design constitutes the ornamental or aesthetic aspect of an article. A design may consist of three-dimensional features such as the shape or surface of an article, meaning a thing, or two-dimensional features such as patterns, lines, or color. Okay. Geographical indications are another type of intellectual property. So geographical indications and appellations of origin are signs used on goods that have a specific geographical origin and possess qualities or reputational characteristics that are essentially attributed or attributable to that place of origin. Most commonly, a geographical indication includes the name of the place of origin of the good. So that would be like made in America. That's a geographical indication. Okay. Trade secrets. Trade secrets are intellectual property rights on confidential information which may be sold or licensed. The unauthorized acquisition, use, or disclosure of such secret information in a manner contrary to honest commercial practices by others is regarded as an unfair practice and a violation of trade secret protection. You'll see this on a lot of things, especially when you see proprietary ingredients on something. That means I'm not going to tell you what my proprietary ingredients are. So you're going to have to trust, right? I'm setting some of those things up for some of the things that I create that are natural products. Some of the but I'm going to set up a proprietary ingredient section for the fact that I don't want you to even attempt to copy what I'm doing. You know, you're not going to know the herbs that I put in this. You'll know that they're botanicals, but you won't know which ones, right? Sometimes I'm just giving you a scenario. Doesn't mean that's exactly what I'm doing. Okay. That's a trade secret as well. All right. Let me get back to y'all and see where y'all at. How we doing? How we doing in the room? The Father is doing this simultaneously, side by side, for the purpose of helping us identify where we are, where we're located. What is the Father's desire for us? Is to occupy, to do trade and commerce. It's to position ourselves so that, and I started talking about this at the opening of this broadcast where I was saying that don't get caught up in the theater. Don't get caught up in the theater of the world systems, because they are there in order that those that are in power would continue to make you subservient to their will. You got to understand that. If you don't understand that, you're going to be going around in circles. You're going to be constantly distracted, divided from what your original assignment is. You're not going to fulfill that. And while you're doing all of this distracted thing that you're doing, this also may be a destiny destroyer, right? So you got to be mindful of that, because the adversary needs consent, but he will, when he gets consent, do as much damage as possible. Okay. So we left off on heaven has released a measurement and accounting of righteousness and unrighteousness. And by divine calculation, we have entered into the time of retroactive recompense. What was stolen must now be returned. What was silenced must now speak. I'm speaking to the sons of Yah. And I clarify this all the time because sonship requires some things. It doesn't just require a conversation. Being a son is one thing, but sonship requires something. That means you're in the ship. It doesn't just mean that you're related. I hope I clarified that. That was Holy Spirit, because I was like, where are we going with this? Son is an inherited factor. This is a factor, but sonship means I am in allegiance. I'm in alignment. I'm in the ship. I'm in the boat. I'm in alignment with what you're saying and what's supposed to be done, right? Okay. So it says, what was stolen must now be returned. That's dealing with sons. What was silenced must now speak. So in the past 2 weeks, we've uncovered generational patterns and examined a righteous standard designed for families. But now we pivot from observation to activation. Okay. This is the week where the called ones in the bloodline, the holy bloodline, must step forward with understanding. You are the technology of heaven, encoded with purpose to reroute your lineage back to Yah. There are some folks that went off, but it's your job, because it's been revealed to you, to reroute the family back to Yah. And that doesn't mean that you're going to beat them over the head with Bible verses. It doesn't mean any of that. It means that first you're going to become the living epistle. You're going to utilize the things that are being given in this Reclaiming the Family intensive to begin this foundation. You're going to go and you're going to do the work. You know, I don't understand this age that we live in where people think that you can, how do you think that you can have something without putting in any work? You don't have to exert any energy for this. You know, energy of faith. You don't have to exert any energy of conversation, energy of declaration, no energy of vision, no energy of writing a thing, you know, that making that declaration, no energy of anything, but it just has to come. It just has to be. That's not how it works, people. That's not how it works. I don't know where that lie began, but it needs to end in this season with the sons of Yah understanding that nothing is just going to happen for you. Nothing is just going to show up in your lap without you putting in the work that is required to manifest what it is that heaven has declared, to manifest what it is that heaven has shown you in vision or dream, right? And then you got to decipher or discern where you are. Are you dealing with a thing that the Father's showing you from an ego perspective, from your ego, or from your eternal? Okay? Because that's also going to determine whether there's delay or whether there is suddenlies. Are you dealing with it from ego or eternal places? Because ego is going to say, I need this to consume it upon my own lust. James, right? James chapter 4. From whence come fighting and wars among you? Why is there a fight? Why is there a battle? Because it's something that you want that you're not getting. You desire to have it, but when you get it, you're only going to consume it on your own lust. You're not understanding the divine picture, that the eternal picture is about Yah being glorified. Remember, I brought this up the other week. He said, where is my honor? Where's my honor? Right? Where is it? How am I going to get glory out of this? And we understood honor just the other week as glory. How is he glorified by the thing that you are desiring? How is he going to be glorified through that? Now, I'm not understand this. He gives us what to desire. That doesn't mean that that place of desire cannot be infected or contaminated. But most of the time when it's infected and contaminated, it's contaminated through ego. Okay? Let's go. Diabolic intellectual property, ideas, technologies, and patterns inspired by fallen counsel has long infected the systems of the world. This is why the word says all that is in the world, just about the world systems, the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life, ego, right? These are the things that are in the world, and these are the things that animate men. When I say men, I mean mankind that has not stepped into the acceptance of the finished work. They're not regenerated. So all they think about, all they see, how they move, how they respond, how they function, how their emotions are moved is by their ego. And when their ego is not satisfied, they are unhappy. This is not the place for sons. Okay, it's long infected the systems of the world, propagated through media. We talked about that a little bit, through government, through education and culture. But the glory of Yah is not silent. It is spreading across the earth. You know, the word declared that the whole earth is filled with his glory, his doings. Whole earth filled with his doings. Are we recognizing the doings of Yah in this season to be able to say, yeah, I'm a part of that. I am an expression of that. Okay. It is spreading across the earth, breathing upon his sons to awaken supernal intellectual property. So we're doing activating the divine blueprints, codes, sounds, and innovations reserved for such a time as this. Now is the time to resound. Now is the time, okay? The righteous seat must declare heaven's verdict and reveal Yah's intent for the sons of manifestation and the legacy they carry. There is a sound, a divine pitch, harmonic, and frequency that frames the bloodline. I want you to hear that. There is a frequency that is indicative of your bloodline currently. And there is a frequency, if it needs to be turned back to Yah, the family bloodline is turned away, there's a frequency that is to be indicative. There's an original frequency of the bloodline, okay? It does more than inspire. It builds, it constructs eternal structures. From that sound comes with witty inventions, heavenly strategies, and innovations that cannot be counterfeited. Remember, I've shared with you guys before, and it just came back up in my spirit that I saw these maps. This was over a decade ago, when the Father dropped these maps down in front of me in a vision. And in the vision, there was a literary map and there was an industrial map. In other words, a corporate map, I should say, a corporate map and a literary map. And on the literary, all of these authors, my brother just joined. On the literary map were all of these authors. Hey, brother, I see you in the room.
Shalom, 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 and shalom.
Hey, I'm glad you made it. I was just in the middle of a conversation with them about this map that heaven had dropped, these maps that heaven had dropped in my view over a decade ago. And so this is where we are dealing with heaven's architecture of the sonship dimension. And we're in how the Father's been in this discussion today. He's been simultaneously running a conversation about business and spiritual things together. And so when you go back and listen to the broadcast, you'll understand what I'm saying. But he gave this literary map and he gave this corporate map. And when he dropped the map down, he showed me what existed there. And then he began to wipe the map and he began to put the sons' names on the map. And I love this because what he said was, he said, I'll make your name great. And so when we're dealing with ego, when we talk about how to deal with eternal things, you're either dealing with what the Father's shown you, because you might have some images of what he's shown you, but you got to be mindful of the place that you're dealing with what he's shown you. Are you dealing with it from ego or eternal place? Right? Are you dealing with it from the eternal place or the ego place? And that's really important. So when he showed me these maps, he began to wipe it clean and he began to put the sons' names on the map. So when I talk about invention and when I talk about intellectual property or IP, when we're talking about all these things, we're dealing with the occupation of the sonship until the coming. And when I say coming, I don't mean the final coming. I mean until the shift happens, because we get really caught up in some of the things that we hear based on what people have said to us and not what it actually says. And so even when it comes to, we shall see him as he is, they're thinking, oh, that's at the end. No. When he appears is every time he's showing up in a prophetic word, every time he's showing up in nature to reinforce something that you've seen or heard. He's showing up, he's appearing so that you will see him as he is and you'll become, because he's revealing to you who he is. You understand what I'm saying? It's not an end of age thing. There is an end of age thing, but that's not always what he's talking about. Elder Vicky said, peace, Apostle Ace.
Shalom, shalom, Prophet.
So I'm glad that receiving that correction has helped you. I'm so glad. This is important. I was really just having a conversation about that. Particularly how over the time that I've been in ministry, how people are very easily offended by truth. I'm not a leader, and I don't believe my brother Apostle Ace is a leader, and I don't know personally many leaders. Like I said, personally, I'm not saying I don't know about leaders that are functioning from this place, but I don't know many leaders personally that function from a place where they're trying to harm you by truth. That they're trying to tell you something to get you straight. That's not, the thing. The thing is to reveal. If you ask a question, to reveal what truth is, what the Father is saying about that, who he is on that matter. That's what truth is. Truth is a person. It's something that you also become. Because as the Father is, so are we. As the Master is, so are we. He said, listen, I'm revealing myself to you so that you become who I am, right? And the sons imitate the Father. Be therefore imitators of Yah as dear children, right? So him as truth is to straighten you out so you become truth, right? And this is why the Master can say, I am the way, the truth, and the life, right? So I'm glad that you're being impacted by that in that way. So we don't just, okay, where are we? It does more than inspire. It builds and constructs eternal structures from the sound that comes, witty inventions, heavenly strategies, and innovations that cannot be counterfeited. So we're dealing with the map. Thank you, Holy Spirit. And he began to put the son's name on the map, which means that sons have to be positioned. And this is the hour, because he keeps bringing it. This is the hour that he's saying, listen, be positioned. That's what I'm telling you. Don't be distracted by what the culture is declaring, by what the news is saying, by what's going on in media, by all that. Because that distraction is a dividing you from the assignment that's at hand. And if you are divided from the assignment that's at hand, you will miss things that you need to see in order to position yourself. I'm going to read this last part, and then I'm going to let my brother say some things, because I had some things. We're talking about reclaiming the family, and we're dealing with revealing and resounding. I don't know if you read everything, brother, but we're going to open up in Esther to Esther in a moment as well. But this week we don't just study. I don't think any week we just study, but I'm just saying this week your call to action is not just study, but it's listening to resound. So we're not just listening for the sake of listening. We're listening to resound. We don't just observe evil strategies. We got to know them. We got to see them. Okay. And like I told you, I don't watch the news, but the news comes to me. What the Father wants me to know about a thing, it shows up. It finds me. I don't find it. Okay. It's not just about observing the evil strategy, but unveiling the divine ones that are the replacement for that strategy that is diabolic. So this is the week of the activation of technology of sonship. And I'll talk about that activation or the sonship technology in just a minute. Brother, I'm glad to have you here.
Well, I'm glad to be here, sister. I really am. It is always a pleasure, and just excited to have a divine, eternal conversation in this earthly realm.
Yes,
It's just
I
wonderful,
love it.
and to everyone that's listening and hearing, it's always a fun, pleasing pleasure just be among the called out ones and having great conversation. It's just wonderful.
Yes, I love it. I love it. We've gone over quite a few things. Um, we're dealing with the revealing and resounding, and we talked about diabolic intellectual property, which we're calling DIP for short, and we kind of revealed spiritual technology or supernal intellectual property, but we talked a little bit more about that today, which we're calling SIP, which I think is phenomenal. DIP and SIP is crazy, but I couldn't have come up with that if I tried. Okay. Holy Spirit is funny. um and what I'm trying to clarify is that we're in the moment in this chapter, in this week, I'm sorry, in this segment, in this portion, where we have to take from weeks 1 and 2 and begin to activate on a different level what Yah's calling us to do, which section 3, which is today, we are, let me go back to it real quick. Um, let me go back to it. Uh, we are dealing with the difference between sip and dip, and also dealing with, uh, here we go. I got it right in front of me. I don't know why I don't see what's right in front of me. Here we are. All right. Okay. Um, declaring destiny, resounding. And so what we're dealing with is the sound that frames the family line, the family bloodline. Thank you, Holy Spirit. The sound that frames the family bloodline. So we've talked about all of these things as a build up to deal with this sound that frames the bloodline. What is the blood? When you hear the names, there's something in a name, And I'm going to ask the question, what's in a name? It's been something that has been very relevant for a lot of different families. You'll understand it when I share this with you in a moment. But what's in a name is very important to people that are intellectually sound, whether they are diabolic or eternal minds. That intellectual soundness positions them to understand the purpose and the divine nature and in a name. Very important. So we're dealing with the sound that frames the family bloodline. And the focus is that sons are framing reality through the declaration, the sound or the resounding of whoever or whatever it is that your family has going on. Destiny is discovered for the purpose of declaration. Destiny is being discovered for the purpose of you resounding, for the purpose of you declaring something. And so this is what we're dealing with in the family bloodline, as those of you who are identifying that you are the divine pivot in your family. This is why I was giving you the prompts that I was giving you over the last couple of weeks and the instruction that I was giving you. to begin to identify the first week, and then to reclaim by writing, becoming the scribe in the family, the scribal seer in the family. You begin to write down a thing, and how heaven's books are written. How they're written is because there are people that were before you that were declaring and decreeing things, and now you are in the earth to declare and to decree things that are putting more things on the books for generations to come. This is that dividing line between those that love Yah and those that hate Him. We see to the third and fourth generation of those that hate Him this visitation of this diabolic situation, right, which most people call the curse. But in the bloodline where those that love the Father, the blessing is perpetual. It's perpetual. I'm gonna let brother say something because y'all been listening to me talk for over an hour and 22 minutes.
Oh my, that's that's awesome. Oh my goodness. I tell you, I just know that all that was coming forth and being revealed, and it's just the dots are connecting, and so that as the dots connect, we can move very clearly seen
Yes,
what is being said. What's being said is come to life. It's being visual, it's being
yes.
virtual, so we can see it as the dots connect. And I just know that as those who are listening, that the the theme that is coming together in the mind of the people in order to get the instruction. When the instructions come, I can do this, and so it's just really wonderful. And so as I listen to you, the portion that I listen to, it's just really something you're talking about, the family resounding, the bloodline and things like that. And it's just really something that, sis, as you were sharing, that portion that I heard, what stood out was, coming back to, because everything is about the family. Everything is about the family. And so, what does his house look like? What does it
Come on.
sound like? And it's interesting,
Yes.
when you mentioned about the name, and
Hmm.
my government name is Ace Newsom Jr. Then my Hebrew name is Benjamin Yah Newsom. You know, and then I say, well, no, that's not your real name. Well, the second the Hebrew name is it's more identifiable with who you are, but your
That's it.
name is I am.
Yeah.
Period. And so as you were sharing, when you begin to identify who you are, your name, and begin to align with your name and who your name is connected to. And so the thought of coming back to understand this very thing of who I am, because of who he is, I am. And so, just that in itself, but yet how important it is when we begin to understand family, and all those things. And I call it, and I look at it as gender authority, you know, gender authority,
Yes.
because when you look at it, when you look at the household, how it stands and how it's supposed to be, it is, um, husband and wife, and father and mother, and then children. And so, coming back to that authority. What is it that, what is the authority of a husband or father, mother, wife or mother? Because it then then there's the children. So it's just really interesting because what Yah is doing now, bringing us back to this and identify who we
Mhm.
are, and it's not identifying us necessarily with as apostles and prophets, teachers, evangelists, and pastors and things like that. Those are titles of one thing, but yet coming back to uh, the gender, who is the one in the family that's going to be, as you were saying, the scribe, the one that's been chosen in the family to um, to uh, with the, as you were saying, the bloodline. Then you talking about the to the third and fourth generation. We see
Yes,
that, but then there's someone that's designated in the family,
to pivot.
absolutely, to stop the blood, that thing right there,
Hmm.
the thing that was declared by Yahweh, that say, hey, if you bow down, if you do all these things, I'm going to punish the children to the third and fourth generation, as you said. But there's someone have to stop the bleeding, okay, and 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 and
Yes,
and standing in the gap for
come on.
those that stop the ugliness or the evil diabolicalness from that has taken place, and stand in the gap so
Yes,
that those who now can move forward free from that. And so it's just really
yes.
something that Yah has chosen in families, that individual, to do that. And it's always one. It's always one, because he do that to begin to affect generations, and so
Yes.
so you can understand, even going back into, he chose one man, chose just one person, chose that one person, but it affected those who are in front, but
Ooh,
yet
you right as a
released
lie.
those that was from behind, you know.
You right in the
And
line. I
so
love it.
it,
Keep going. Woo. I
and
love it when
so
the Father
it's
does
really
this. I just love it. I love it. Mm.
and
Wow.
so it's really something.
I'm just blown away.
it's and so here we are, and yet there is the one that is been, there are many called, but there is the few that is chosen, that
Wow.
makes up that remnant, that that says. So when you look at gender, or when you look at the family, and it's interesting how things line up, with family, with husband and wife, and then how are they one, because it does affect the seed. If
Come on.
they if they are a mixture, then the seed become a mixture. You just don't know
Woo.
how it's going to look like and what have you. Because when you even look at Noah and his sons and their wives, they all the sons represented truth, evil, and a mixture, and their
Yes.
wives were one with them. And yet we got to understand, even Noah himself, how his wife was, where she was, where they were when each one of the sons were born.
Hmm.
You see, and so it's just interesting because that one has been chosen.
Come
That
on.
one. And it's interesting when that one is chosen, the journey that one has to go through, just standing in the gap. As you were saying, you don't have to watch the news just come to you.
They do. I'm not sitting up like, what's going on in the world?
Right, right.
Oh
And
my
listen, sis,
goodness.
you don't have to do anything, because you don't have to chase anything. Things
No.
is automatically, it's a magnetic pull toward you, and whether it is good, righteous, or evil, it's always filtering coming to you
That's it.
because you've been chosen and
That's
what
it.
have you. A lot of times we don't understand the journey all the time as we're coming up, but
Yeah.
the journey is perfecting the chosen one. Because now, when you line up, when you begin to line up, you begin to deal with the sound of who, where you come from. I was telling someone the other day that when you deal with spirit and truth and how he's done things, because he's bringing us back to the eternal spirit of who he is.
Yes.
Now, it started out spirit. It's interesting. It started out spirit because Yah came down on the mountain and spoke to them by his spirit, his
That's
righteousness.
it.
It's him. They rejected him. Then
Shit.
he put what he said on the stone and paper.
Mm-hmm.
Then he said, "Now here are my instructions. Here's my truth. Now this is what you're gonna have to do in order to be spiritually connected to me." Because you don't have my spirit on the inside. You're still not identified. Only way I can identify you is with the things that I've given you to do to follow instructions. However, during the antiquity of time moving forward, he said, now you got to understand my mind. You got to understand my thoughts because I want to return you back. Come on, I
Yes.
want you to return back to the spirit of things.
Come
So it
on.
started off with spirit, truth, now spirit again. Because I want you to operate on a higher level of frequency because you got to identify who you are. Now, when it come down to that, everybody ain't getting it all at the same time. It has to be that chosen one that's
Come on.
been in the family, the
Come on.
chosen one
Come on.
that carries the name, that resound. Because when you look at Ham, Yasser, and Seth, it was through Seth he began to restore the name of Yahweh back.
That's it.
And it was his son that said, now the name comes back. So the name could be what? Sounded in the atmosphere.
Yes.
And when it's sounded in the atmosphere, now when it's coming out of the individual that lines up, everything that that individual does is not on his own. He don't become a God of his own without Yahweh.
Come
He
on.
becomes a greater with him who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you were saying in the Deuteronomy chapter 30, because 30:19, and as you read, and I looked at it briefly before I came, and that's one of my scriptures I got highlighted.
Come on.
And it said, and I call heaven and earth as a witness against you this day, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursing, because you are a free agent to make your own choice between righteousness and evil.
Come on.
Therefore, choose life so both you and your children can live. He
Come on.
said, I'm giving you a choice. I want you to choose life, but you're a free agent because of disobedience. You got to make the choice because you as a God now without me.
Mm.
But but I want you to make the right decision because you make the right decision, live by it. I want you to live. I don't want death in your life. I don't want death. I want you to live. But however,
Mm.
you're a free
You gotta
agent.
make a choice. You have
Right? You have the choice now. Yeah, because so in the beginning, you gave up that choice. You gave up and began to live as a God, making your own choice without me.
yeah.
And so it's just interesting because where we are at today, sis, and it's just really awesome. I tell you, that the ones that Yah has chosen is rising up. It's coming forth. It's coming forth that will make the difference. We look at mainstream religion and all those things and what have you, but however,
What my husband
but
loves to for
however,
me to call the industrial religious, religious industrial complex. He cracks up every time. He be screaming every time. I'm like, it's not that
right.
funny. Do you know what it
This
means?
is, come on now. Yeah,
Come on.
it's really something that and how the voice is coming forth.
Yeah.
It's coming forth. And in the middle of all the mainstream industrial complex, all that stuff, and the
Yes.
voice is coming forth.
Mm,
It's starting to come forth. Those who have been assigned in the belly of the beast, the voice is starting to come forth.
mm, mm,
It's
mm.
starting to come forth. All the things that the ones who have been chosen.
Yes.
You know, everybody say, "Oh, I'm the chosen." No, you're not.
Mm,
Everybody, and it is evident that it's not,
period.
because your sound does not match up with the eternal sound of where you come from.
Ooh, come on now. Come on.
You see, so if we don't, if we become as He is. We
Hmm.
become so eternal. Our the whole lifestyle. We just being. We
Mm,
become. We be just as a being where we come from back to, and so that goes back into, as you was studying with several the
yes.
return jubilee
Yes.
return back to what the original
Yes.
coming back, but we come back now in perfection.
Come on now.
We come back in perfection. And so, that family dynamics and everything, and how powerful it is, and what have you. It's just interesting. It's just really wonderful, because when we get this throughout, from Genesis to Revelation, Revelations to Genesis, it's about restoring this family, the dynamics. What does it sound like? What are the sons of what to do? What are we are to do? We imitate our father. We
Come on.
imitate. We have the wisdom of the mother. So therefore, when we are operating eternally as immortals, we're imitating, because now our assignment is eternal and not earthly, because what we do eternal affects everything in the earth.
Mm, come on now.
But anyway.
I love it. I love it. You went right down the road. I love when the Father does that. It just it's such a signification of his conversation. When bro ain't been on the line, he don't know where I'm going. I mean, we don't have conversations about this before we talk. And the reason one of the reasons why we don't have major conversations about it, not we don't have major conversations about it, because this is not a scripted situation. This is a conversational situation where we're leaving room for heaven to decide what he wants to discuss and how deep he wants to go on what subjects. you know and when we do that, then the Father can reach those that are listening the way that he needs to reach those that are listening. He knows who's on. He knows who needs to hear what. He knows who's going to listen after the fact. He knows all of that. And I was saying, while you were talking, a couple of things came to my mind. That the familial name is the vehicle for heaven's expression. This is what the adversaries, this is what diabolic nature wants to get a hold of, the family name. Why? Because it is the vehicle for expression. Okay. We have a new family. So this new family that we have is what positions us as this divine pivot to begin to deal with diabolic nature and to realign or reacclimate or justify the family back to its natural setting so that the expression is divine. It is eternal, right? The other thing, I went back to the news thing because you brought it back up, and the Holy Spirit said the news reports to you for judgment. You don't have to seek it. So I put in the room, the news reports to me for judgment. This is why I'm not seeking it, because I don't have to seek it. That ain't got nothing to do with my life. That has nothing to do with where I am, where I'm going. Has nothing to do with that. But what is needful for me to identify with, the Father will reveal to me, so that, there you go, treasure chest, so that I can extrapolate from that, or identify or decipher or discern from that where I'm supposed to be standing, if that makes sense. Okay. Here's the other thing. You mentioned the ark. We talked about the mountain. You begin to talk about Moshe and the commandments and that kind of thing. And it took me back to two things. It took me back to, I'm about to get ahead of myself. I'm gonna go with the ark first. The question that he asked me was, how much did the ark weigh? I want you to think about this. How much did the ark weigh? We're not dealing with literal poundage, literal that, but how much did it weigh? When you start dealing with weights and measurement, you got to deal with the spirit of a thing. And this is the thing that has absolutely become um, an issue for a lot of people, is the spiritual weight of a thing is more than what they want to deal with. But you don't understand that the diabolic weight is more than what you want to pay. you know? But how much did the ark weigh? We know the tablets were in the ark, right? So that's what, but there were the rest of the law, what they call law. It's really loving instructions. They were instructions, directives. The instructions of Yah were in the side of the ark. So you got the tablets inside the ark. That's where the 10 were written out, because those were major. Those were the main, the main veins of everything else that was written, right? But there were over 600 laws. 600 loving instructions that he gave, because he knew the people he was dealing with. But the main veins of that were written so that they could identify, kind of hone in on, okay, if we follow this, then we've covered all of that. So then the master came and said, I can cut the list down even more. I'm fulfilling it. I'm going to fulfill it right now and show you that if you love the Father with all your heart, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself, you will have fulfilled all of the law and the prophets. Right? But how much did it weigh? The weight of that thing from a spiritual perspective took how many priests? 4 priests to carry it? But the whole nation was attached. Those 4 priests were just the priests that were to carry it in that moment, but there were more that were to carry it. So it's necessary that we understand the weight that we're carrying right now with the law written on the table of our heart. Right? There's a weight there that we're carrying. Now, I want to go back to something, because you mentioned this, something that made me think about, you mentioned talking about the expression, and I wanted you to go back down that road, and you did that so masterfully. Talking about the expression of female and male expression. And what came back to me was the vision that I had when I was a teenager. I probably was about 15 or 16 when I had this vision regarding male authority, and particularly the husband and father authority. And the vision that I saw, I believe this was Yah describing to me what my husband, or what a father would look like, what it was supposed to look like. Vision or dream, I don't know whether I was, and I don't know where I was. I just know this is what I saw. There was a male figure standing in the doorway, and his hands were in the jambs of the door. His hands, right and left, were in the top of the doorway on both sides, and his feet were on both sides in the jamb of those doorways. And he stood, his chest was just standing up so straight, it was so upright. He was standing upright in that doorway, and everything that was being thrown at that house was bouncing off of his chest. It was literally, things were being hurled. I mean, all kinds of sizes, all kinds of things, both spiritual and natural, just being thrown at him in this doorway. And he was standing. We talking about one to stand in the gap. That's a male expression. Standing in the doorway. And in this doorway, he is standing between what's being thrown at the house and what's not allowed to enter. He's standing in between what's in the house and what's outside of the house. This is the expression, the male expression. And so this covers a whole lot of territory, because we're not just talking about somebody breaking into your house. People love to go to the natural side of things, but he ain't even dealing with just that. We're dealing with on a spiritual level. This diabolic intellectual property, the mindset, the inherited cultural identity of things, how things work, all of that. These are the things that could be hurled at a house. If you never understood the definition of what a wife is, or a husband is, or a father or a mother is, then, what's hurled at the house from a diabolic perspective are these concepts, these principles, these ideas that from the diabolic culture invade the space to root out the eternal ideas and concepts that were originated with eternal. They were originated with Yah. The family is a Yah concept. It's not a man concept. There ain't no man come up with family. Yah came up with that. So um, how could we ever execute family properly without him? How could we execute being a husband or a wife without him? How could we execute being a mother or a father without him? And so the Father's calling us back. He's saying, listen, there may be some things you didn't know before, but now you know. So now you have to go walk out the correction of it, become the divine pivot in your household so that people can see the pivot, so that they can see heaven's response to the familial dynamics. And as you're hovering over those waters and you're declaring what you need to declare, hey, there go Pastor Wilborn. I texted you this morning. I don't know if you got it. As we're identifying those family dynamics, and defining those things, and then redefining those things according to what heaven has declared, and declaring more books. What does this look like? What does this sound like? As heaven is revealing the thing, are you just aggravated about what's being revealed, or do you understand how to respond to it, how to resound, how to speak back to it? This is the same thing that happened with the Mashiach in the wilderness, right? He understood how to speak back to the thing that was internally causing him discomfort. Blessings, brother. My brother, Apostle Clarence, is on. Clarence Squires. Blessings, brother. He understood how to respond to that. So this is what the call is about right now as we're reclaiming the family. Understanding in week 3 how to reveal, how to accept the revelation of the things that are being revealed, and then resound. How do we say what we say back to it? Are we responding or are we reacting? What is the resonance? What is the frequency? What is the communication? What is the energy that is being released? Where is it coming from? You know, even, and I'm led to deal with this, even in how you interact with people. Well, because we're talking about the family dynamics, how you interact with people. You know, what is the energy that you're releasing when you're responding in your interactions? Where is that coming from? You know, as a husband, the word declares that the man should deal gently with his wife. So you can't be in a place where you huffing and puffing about to blow the house down. I don't care what the situation is, because you have been given a specific command to express yourself in a certain way because of the authority that you carry. So huffing and puffing like you're about to blow the house down is ridiculous. It's not what you're called to. Being irritated is not what you're called to. You're a director. You're supposed to be directing the thing. You're supposed to be, giving the instruction, the loving instruction, so that things move smoothly. But if you're antagonizing and you're, irritated and you're feeling some kind of way about everything and ego is running the show, then how that's going to impact the environment that you live in is catastrophic, because a man that treats a woman this way can't receive from her what Father has put in her to carry his vision, because it interrupts, it delays, it stalls the vision. She's got to carry it. She's got to birth it. It stalls it, because now she's dealing with ego. She's dealing with flesh. She's dealing with the weight of something that she wasn't supposed to be dealing with. Same thing with children. There is a time to speak firmly. I speak firmly to my grandchildren all the time, but hollering and screaming as a rule of thumb is not a thing. Because where are the conversations? I'm only getting ready to holler at you. I'm only getting ready to raise my voice at you if I've told you something multiple times and now you're not hearing me. Now I can see that you have ignored you on the right path. Now I'm hollering because you're about to get hit by the car. You understand? You about to walk out into oncoming traffic. I'm about to holler now. You're stepping into the wrong space. You're doing the wrong thing, and it's harmful. Now I'm about to holler. I understand that. I understand that. But we got to understand the expression. What is the energy? What is the frequency of heaven? How do we respond? How do we resound the family legacy? How do we resound? What is in a name? What's in the name? I'm going to post this up really quickly too. And it simply says it's one of the things that people take so lightly, but it's the most important as it pertains to wealth and riches and dominion, the family. People take it very lightly. People take it very lightly. They don't understand the construct of family because they don't take the time. They only understand what they've seen. And if what you've seen was not successful, why are you following that pattern? If what you saw in your youth was not successful, you didn't see husband and wife. You only saw granny, or you only saw mama, or or the dynamic was arguing. If what you saw was not fruitful, it was not beneficial, if what you saw was not heavenly productive, divinely productive, then why are you following that pattern? Why are you following that pattern? It's been revealed to you so that you can resound differently, so that you can release something differently. Uh-oh, Prophet Marleaston showed up in the room now too. Brother will be back. Hey sister, how are you? Sister, are you there? I think you're on mute, sugar. I think thou art on mute. Yeah, so this is where we are. It's really important to understand it. So let's go a little bit further. I know Prophet Marlise has something to say because she didn't jump on the line, okay? She didn't jump on the line. Um, and I'll give you Deuteronomy chapter 31 for your reference to identify the weight of the ark. When I say weight, I'm dealing with spiritual weight of the ark and where things are placed, that kind of thing. Deuteronomy 31, verses 24 through 26. You can go there and look at that, okay? Let's go back to this conversation. If you guys missed all that was spoken for over an hour and 30 minutes, you need to go back and listen to that. It'll put everything that I'm saying now or that's being said after that time in context for you if you're missing anything, but I believe you'll be able to catch what the Holy Spirit is saying, okay? So the last thing we discussed was how DIP, or diabolic intellectual property, infects families. And one of the quotes that I spoke to you was, sons must trace not just what's happening, but who wrote the pattern. And we just left off with that. So I want to repeat that again. Very important that you understand who wrote the pattern. Let's go to Esther really quickly. I want to go there because this is really important to go over as we're talking about the resounding, what that response, not the reaction, should look like. What should it sound like? Okay, what should it sound like? I'm going to use that as a reference point, and then we'll go to Deuteronomy 30. I'm going to put the verses. I'm going to put scripture focus. Hold on, let me put that scripture focus and the main scriptures. These are key verses for you guys. I'm going to put them in the chat room so that you can go back to that. Okay. We're going to go to Esther. We're going to go to Deuteronomy chapter 30. We're going to go to Job, which is stated as Job, but we know there was no Y. And we're going to go to Romans. Okay, we just want to take a look at some key things to frame the resounding effect, the resounding factor. Okay. Because sound frames the family bloodline. And one of the things that I want to talk about is that for at least a century, we've been asleep. And I know you're going to ask me, what do you mean by that? Why do you say that? And I'll say this, because we haven't been doing this family thing right at all. That's why I'm asking you today, what's in a name? That's why we're having this intensive, because I want you to identify, re-identify the will of Yah for the family bloodline. And I want brother, when he comes back, to deal with a mixed lineage, because that's a thing that is very common right now when we're dealing with the female and the male expression. We understand the order is husband and wife first, then it's children. What does this look like from the perspective of mixture? When bloodlines are mixed, how should that look? And the only thing that's coming to my mind right now, I want him to really touch on that. But I'm going to share this with you because back in the day when families had to join forces in order to accomplish tasks, this is where we got the line blacksmith from, right? Or I'm trying to think of a bunch of different names that define what a thing was. The name or the terminology was come up with. It wasn't necessarily the name of the individual family, uh, but it became the name of a lineage or a generation or generations after them, because one's last name was Black and the other one was Smith, but they joined forces because of their family. Uh, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? The emblem, because of the standard, because of the family standard, which we talked about last week. Because of the family standard, which we know Israel had, all the encampments had a standard. Because of the family standard, they had to join forces. So Black Smith became the name of generations after them. It wasn't their name, but it became the name of the generations that would follow. Got that? Mm-mm-mm-mm. So let's dive into this. I don't know where Prophet Marlise went. She fell off. I can't figure out how to get her back in here. Sister, your sound was muted. I couldn't hear anything you were saying. I did open up your sound on my end, but I could not hear you. So you can rejoin the room. Rejoin the room. Okay. Okay. Where are we looking at? What are we looking like? Okay, so the sound frames the family line, bloodline. And I was saying for at least a century. I know it's been longer, but I'm just giving you 100 years. Let's just do 100 years. We've been out of touch. We've been asleep because we have not identified with what's in the name. We have not identified the importance of the vehicle called family to be the expression of heaven and the earth based on what its standard is. And so I got a couple things I want to share, a couple names I want to throw out there before we read our passages. I'm going to throw these names out there and you tell me what you hear when you hear the name. Okay? Because when I say these names, some things are going to come to your mind, right? Abraham. What comes to mind when you hear the name Abraham? What comes to mind? Okay. What about Yitzchak, which the Bible calls Isaac? Yitzchak. Um, One of the things that you remember regarding Abraham and Yitzchak is the possession that was described as great wealth. You'll remember that. You'll also remember of Yitzchak, who is also Isaac, that Yaakov comes out of Yitzchak, and he is the father, the founding father of the tribes that become the chosen because of their connection to Abraham, their connection to uh, uh, Noah, their connection to a specific bloodline, a specific movement that was abandoning the way of the first Adam. It won't let you unmute. Okay, hold on, sister. Let me see. Okay, what about now? Oh,
I'm
it keeps
good
muting
now.
you back. Okay, good. Okay, cool. All right, let me finish this thought. And I know you got something to say. Blessings, Prophet Ivan. I see you in the room. Thank you for being with me today. Um, so when you hear those names, things come to mind, right? There's a lineage there, which a lot of people skip over. The father of nations. There you go, Pastor Wilborn. Um, when they see the lineages in the scripture, they pass over that. Oh, I don't know why I got to read the lineage, because it's very important for you to understand how to connect the dots, for you to understand who fathers of peoples are, right? That's really important for you to know who the father of the Moabites is, the Edomites. All of that's very important. That's it. Isaac promised sacrifice. Those things come to mind, right? Okay. So these are just a few names. Oh, here's some more names for you. Wait, I got some more because I don't want to leave the female expression out. Esther, which we're going to go to shortly. What about Deborah? What about Mary? Some things come to mind when you hear these names. You're thinking about something. If I go all the way back to, okay, let me see, Ruth. What about Ruth? She became the great grandmother, oh my God, of David, right? And David is the father of, he's a part of the lineage of the Mashiach, goes back to son of David. You hear that often mentioned concerning the Mashiach, dealing with the throne, okay? Mm-mm-mm. Promised child. That's it, Elder Vicky. Y'all thinking. Things come to mind. So these are just a few names of individuals who impacted history. And so I want you to make a note of history impaction. Okay? I tell you, we've been doing it wrong. We've been doing it wrong. Okay? Because the goal of family is to make impact, is for housing the blessing. Okay? So here go a few more names. Okay? We know that these families that are these names that I already mentioned were impactful in history. Their sound was continued long after they were no more. They are not in this epoch, but the epoch that they lived in impacted the epoch that we live in. Are you understand what I'm saying? So here are a few more names that aren't in the Bible that you're going to recognize really easily. Sam Walton. And everybody's favorite, Donald Trump. Okay, I want to go through these. I got some more for you because what we're dealing with is impact. What we're dealing with is legacy, whether it's diabolic or not. You got to understand that even darkness understands that the construct of family is for impact in the earth. So we've been doing it wrong, right? So let's look at this. I want to show you a couple more families. Now, Prophet, you can say something because I know you've been listening. Go ahead and share some things that impacted you and whatever the Holy Spirit is giving you now while I go to this other place that I need to go to pull up something.
You know, there's a lot of names that are impactful, and we do know names have a lot of meaning and determination. But the people are setting a legacy of remembrance. But I know when we're speaking about legacy, when we're speaking about inheritance, when we're speaking about change, when we're speaking about um, things that matter, those things that bring about
Lasting
lasting change
change.
and triggers. Let me say triggers is another one. The
They trigger
triggers,
something else.
because um, one that triggers them is, and I'm going to go. Uh, Let me say, how can I say this? It's getting ready. I'm gonna be, you know me. I'm gonna go simplistic. Okay. All right.
That's fine. That's
Let
simple
me
is
say it like
beautiful.
that. I'm gonna go simplistic. Rahab.
Yes.
As I was here, I could hear Rahab. She just her trust and her discernment, her level of, because see, we understand what she was, but who
What she
she
was.
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 Now,
Was.
hold on. What she
That's it.
was
Was.
versus who she was or became or
Became.
was
Come on.
already. It was in her. The discernment and the
Yeah.
prophetic was in her. Right?
Yes.
But she lived
Yes.
a life that was opposite of or
Opposite.
contrary to. But it
Mhm.
but she utilized it at the right time to benefit God's people and
Mhm.
became a part of the fold. So the wonderful uh, thought and trigger is redemption, because we always thinking about redemption. We think about all these different
Yes.
festival times and things and whatnot and celebrations, but atonement and repentance,
Mhm.
redemption, restoration,
Mhm.
and strengthening are all things that when I think of her, I think about the other ones too, but I think about her. I think about that true,
Mhm.
those things that are true about everyone, but it was shown through her, even down to
Yeah.
her fearlessness.
Mhm. Love it.
So, and then on top of that, it was a woman.
Come on.
She was
Come on.
more of a chief and commander in her own space and right than even
Mhm.
those that were the spy and those that led the armies, because just her movement helped defeat
Uh,
and
and
defeat.
defend
There you go.
the
So that's my input
legacy.
right now.
I love that. I love that you brought that up because it lends itself to female and male expression again. And when we get a grasp on the expression of Yah being male and female, not physicality, but
Correct.
expression, then we are putting ourselves back into
Correct.
divine alignment,
Correct.
right? Foolish is the man who can't hear his wife. Foolish is the woman who can't
That's it.
hear her husband. That those expressions are
And what's
absolutely
so interesting
invaluable.
is that she knew how to negotiate and she knew how to lead
Yes.
because she led them in the
Yep.
instructions of do this and this, that. And when this happens, then you do this. Don't even understand. She led
Absolutely.
an army without being a part of the army.
Come on now. That's so powerful. It really is.
And so we can,
It
but it
really is.
also strikes a thing of you cannot diminish an individual based on what they do, or should I say what they are in their current
In
state,
their current status. Hmm.
because Yah will use anybody, anytime.
He will.
He has no preference of
He will.
person. And we have to remember
He
that.
does not.
And so
Yeah.
they were wise enough to understand and to trust her. So all of them
Yes.
had to be in alignment and agreement to the will of Yah and have that discernment to know we can trust
Yeah.
this who was a harlot, who was a woman of the night, a mistress, a madam, or whatever you want to call her,
Yes.
because she when my
Yes.
understanding, she had people that was under her, so she was used to leadership,
That's it.
organizing. That's it. Yeah, a
Galvanizing,
little
organizing.
galvanizing, yes. And so here it is.
Absolutely.
But God used her talent, her acquired gifts and skill, along with the spiritual, to accomplish something through her
That's it.
and, on behalf of. And so, yeah.
Hmm. Yes, Lord.
Yeah.
I
So,
love it. I have a thought, but it left me. But there's so many thoughts going on at one
I
time.
know,
It's just
right?
absolutely amazing. I want to go back to what's in a
Mm-hmm.
name, right? And I have a few more families here, and I'll go back to the Trumpinator and Sam Walton in this conversation. But there are a lot of wealthy families who have left. We talk about legacy, left lasting legacy over the past century or more, not only through their wealth, but also through their influence, their innovation, and their power structures. And so you say, well, why would you mention that now? Because they're just simply taking the taking the outline, the blueprint that most people ignore, that call themselves believers, and utilizing it for their advantage, whether they're doing diabolic things or not. The point of family is being fulfilled, which is impact. The point of family is being a vehicle of wealth. The point of family is being, you know, rich in heritage and culture, whether it's diabolic or not. You're missing the point. The point is that diabolic nature is following something that you're not. And now you have to align yourself with what the word really says so that you can become what he's really calling you to become. Um, the Rothschild family. When I say that name, you understand. You've heard it before, right? And I won't go into too many details, but when we talked about this before, about the changing of a name. When you understand the purpose of the changing of a name, then you understand that it is valid. It's biblical. It is necessary if you are going to move forward in a way that is successful or beneficial. Sometimes names have to be changed, right? Because what's attached to the name is important for the success of the future. Okay. And if people knew what was behind the name, right, then they probably wouldn't connect with you. Okay. Um, because the name would just have you in a loop of something else. It would have you signified under something else instead of the thing that you need to be signified under. So their origin was German, Jewish, banking dynasty, and that says a lot all in itself because we talk about the ish all the time, right? So you guys have clarity. And I can speak about that because I'm not a 501c3, I'm a 508c1a, and I can say what I want to say. I'm protected by that. Legacy highlights the most powerful banking empire in Europe during the 18th and 19th centuries. So they have for centuries, several centuries. Okay. And they came from broke to wealth. Okay. Because somebody in the family bloodline took the old name and said, we about to toss that out. We go in a different direction. Okay. They finance wars, national infrastructures, railroads, canals, and governments influencing global financial systems. We're still dealing with them today. So when I tell you that all of this distraction in the news, all of the things that are being discussed are simply about the reset of commerce, the reset of the financial systems, that's all it's about. So you need to make sure that you're positioned. Don't worry about what they're doing. What are you doing? That information is coming to you for you to position yourself, not for you to be, having a fit about what's being done and all of that. Okay. They created international financial communication networks before the telegraph was even created. They are known for discretion. I got a book right now that I started reading that I need to go back to because I'm telling you, when you learn how your enemy moves, you understand how they take what the Father has given and twist it for their benefit. They they're known for discretion and operating through intermarriage and moral wealth and secrecy. Do you know that some things are eternal only for sons? They are secrets, and I tell y'all all the time: the Father don't share His secret with strangers. His secrets with strangers, He will never do it. He will never do it. That's why some things that I say are encoded. People that don't know, they don't know. But people that do know, they know. It's for them. Okay. Legacy includes investments in wine, Chateau Lafite, Rothschild, art, conservation efforts, all of this. Okay. If I say Rockefeller, y'all already know. This is the United States family. John D started all of that. And they are, when I say Rockefeller, you go to oil first. This go all the way back to 1870. Okay. I can give y'all a lineup of this. I'm not going to read all of it, but they created lasting philanthropic institutions, the Rockefeller Foundation. So they have collaborated uh, with University of Chicago and Rockefeller Center. And by the way, um, I'm just going to throw this out there because I am like really put off by the fact that our people are so deceived by so many things and that they connect on certain levels to things and don't realize that they're coming into diabolic contracts with their connections. But I just want to speak to the um, fraternity and sorority mindset. Y'all do know that HBCUs are not black colleges. I just, I know that that's who they house there. I know that's what is drawn there. But just for the sake of your review, just for the sake of you to go back and identify what's really going on, mm, that's not what that is. It's just not what it is.
Mm.
HBCU University uh, is named after a white. It's named after white people. That's what I'm going to say. Okay. Even Spelman is named after somebody's wife. Spelman is not just a random name. But historically, these that we call black colleges are, or universities, HBCUs, are, yeah, they're not what they say they are. But you guys get involved in all these things that were established by by the same people that you say are holding you back. That's a whole nother story. Because nobody can really hold any nation particularly back. It's just ignorance holds us back from how we need to advance. And the Father's even opening that up in this hour. He's even opening that up. So there's going to be no excuse because we're being called to a place to rise in this hour. And only people that don't know are going to stay where they are, whining and pointing fingers and all of that stuff, right?
Apostle.
I just had to insert that because a lot of y'all are so beholden to these things.
Apostle.
Yes, ma'am.
You done hit on something. I've been preaching, but let me say this: there is a such thing as a true HBCU. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
folks don't like
Yes.
to hear it because they
Yes.
say, "Oh no, his black." No, it HBCU, and I want you all to do the definition
Yes.
and understand the definition of a true HBCU.
True. True.
A true HBCU,
Authentic. Official.
official, not commingled, not
Yeah.
diluted.
Not culturally stolen.
That's it. A true HBCU is originally funded by people of color, blacks,
Mm-hmm.
for blacks,
Mm-hmm.
hands down.
Hands down.
No commingling. So when you have the backing of or the startups of through Rockefeller, if you or should I, and also the what is it? What is it? CMH, because the Atlanta University was a HBCU,
Mm-hmm. It was.
and it merged
Yes.
with the Christian. What is it? Because we have African
Oh,
American
CMA.
CMAs. Thank you. And when they merged, they no longer had the status of HBCU in the form in which we know we were supposed to know it. They have now the form of what we know it to be now. But
Mm-hmm.
a true HBCU like Morris Brown, whom they have tried to destroy,
Right.
but is still around and is still putting out students of quality.
Mm-hmm.
Mind, I can name some others, but I'm not gonna go there because I'm just gonna stay in my little lane. They have from Clark to Morehouse and Spelman have tried to wipe away Morris Brown because it is the only true history and legacy of what a HBCU is. And they want to whitewash it or mask it or kill it off. Understand, you have others in other states, in other places that are true HBCUs. But
Mm-hmm.
if it is funded by anybody else other than
Yep. Who is
black
supposed to be funded by?
organization or philanthropist or any, if it is not a person of color, African American, black, I don't care what you want to call them, it is not a HBCU.
That's
That
right.
is the reason why you can have white valedictorians,
Right. And
white presidents.
HBCU.
Yes. And that's why Morehouse is Morehouse, and it has spread it across abroad because it is not a true HBCU.
Mm-hmm.
And I have people who are very hurt when I say that.
And
I don't mean
sometimes
harm, but it's the truth. So
those
we have to understand the whitewashing, and we have to understand the
literally.
infiltration of lineage and heritage. And they're looking to take that portion of heritage over the same as other things, our giftings and our talents that they so freely capitalize upon.
Yep. I don't know if you were on when I was talking about intellectual property, but if you missed any
That's
of
it.
that, okay.
They want to steal the intellectual property. And
Mm-hmm.
I keep saying, be mindful of AI because they're coming up with where AI will say what they did for you is their intellectual property, and they're going to require you to have payment set up for AI.
Yeah. And
So
it's
be
all
mindful.
and it's all in how you use a thing because people
That's
don't know
it.
how to
You have to
use.
be strategic.
You don't know how to use systems. If you don't know how to use systems, you need to learn so that you don't
Learn it, yes,
misuse
Lord,
the
because
system and
you
get
will
caught
end
up.
up because
Yeah.
there it is a strategy. And when you if you have a prophetic eye, and the Lord will show you things in distance, understand you are to learn from it, but
Mm-hmm.
not have it build for you your empire, because it will come for your empire.
Yes,
Same
ma'am.
as Hezekiah. Hezekiah opened the doors for the king to come in and see all of his stuff, so that way the king from afar
Right.
should capture.
Mm-hmm.
Be mindful of how you expose what you expose
Yeah.
in that situation. So yeah, but
That's
this is a good subject. Ooh.
it.
And And then you were talking about names and intellectual property. You know, I put in the chat Jimmy Carter.
Yeah.
That is another one, lineage. But he also helps people to have a lineage or heritage or inheritance
Yeah.
in small ways. Because true enough, some of the homes are not necessarily brick and it's not made with mortar, but they are made with siding and things. But it is a start to building lineage, heritage,
Habits.
inheritance. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So let's go to family number two. We're talking about the Rockefellers. When we say Rockefeller, you should know oil if you study. But if you don't study things, then you won't know these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very important to know.
And pharmaceutical, I'm just saying.
So
I
yeah,
think about Rockefeller, I think about a whole lot of stuff.
yeah, we
Land,
ain't even got there because once you start talking
oil,
about oil, you got
Rockefeller.
to understand pharmaceutical because they put petrol in the medication anyway.
True. Yeah.
So, you got to understand all of the
That's
things that
it.
it touches. It's a multinational corporation.
Education. So
Yeah,
we get them in the educational level so we can control them.
that's
We
it.
can
That's what it was
determine the
created.
path in which they should go, which will benefit our
Our
lineage.
corporations, right?
That's it. That's
So
it.
they shape public health, education, and international relations.
That's it.
Helped establish the United Nations headquarters in New York City, and they are still active through banking, politics, environmental initiatives, and the like. The Walton family. You know about their legacy. Sam Walton founded Walmart in 1962, now the world's largest retailer. He revolutionized retail by emphasizing low prices, efficient logistics, and small town access, created enormous wealth, consistently ranking among the richest families in the world. He left an inheritance. He has heirs that have diversified his investments into art, crystals, a Crystal Bridges Museum of America art, education reform, and substantially or sustainability efforts. They maintained influence through ownership structure and controlling shares in Walmart. Why am I saying all of this? Because you're missing the point of what family is. You trying to go do something for somebody else instead of building your legacy. You trying to stay stuck in a space when the Father's saying, I pulled you out of spaces for you to build legacy. I'm not going to build legacy just on your ego of everything that you've done. I can't build legacy on everything that I've done. Just because I was this. Okay, that's me. But what am I doing for legacy's sake? That's great. What I've accomplished, wonderful. But have anything that I've accomplished, has it built legacy? Or is it just attributed to something, a plaque on the wall, or you know what I'm saying, shake of the hand, or acknowledgement of me? How does it build legacy? Right? How do I turn that into a legacy building machine? The things that I've been given, the things that I've accomplished. How does that become legacy? The DuPont family, they originated in France and came to the United States. 1802, gunpowder manufacturer is where they started. Later becoming a chemical giant, but they were a gunpowder manufacturer. The other thing you're going to notice about these names that I'm mentioning now, and I'm giving you a little more depth on these because we're in the earth and this is what they do, so you can see the patterns. I gave you names of people that you can go read that and look at the patterns. But I'm giving you these names now because I want you to see tangibly in the earth how people are doing this, what they're doing. The other thing that you're going to notice about these families is diversification. And you're going to also notice that where it started is not where it ends. Okay? They have in mind the family legacy. They understand the foundational principles of something, and they're going to take it to the next level. Okay? They innovated products like nylon, Teflon, Kevlar, and Lycra, transforming industries from fashion to defense. I'm going to say this. I've been in a mindset, sister, and those of you that are listening, because I, design clothes and all that stuff, and I really want to start doing my lines and all that. But beyond that, I really want to go back to just basic materials. Because all these things that have been created are impacting hormonal balance. They're impacting so many things. And the longer we've gone into these things, they become a greater impact. I remember when polyester, in the 60s, that was a really big thing, right? But you got to understand all of this merging of fabrics that the Bible talks about, and people overlook it because they're like, oh, that's the old law, that's this, that's that. No, there was a reason why the Father said, don't merge them. Don't do that. Because it creates a frequency, it creates a resonance. You know what I'm saying? The resonance of lycra fiber versus cotton is two different things. Did y'all know that linen sheets capture light and frequency and they could heal your body? This is why they took linen sheets off hospital beds. It used to be the mainstay of a hospital bed was linen sheets. This is why people could get well in the hospital
That's
back in the
it.
day, because they were laying on linen sheets. And linen sheets, those fibers in and of themselves, the frequency of those fibers creates a healing effect. I'm buying me linen sheets in the season, I promise you. They're expensive. This is why they're so expensive too. You know, anything that's good for you is going to cost you something. You better believe
They had
that.
to find the right things to replace it with,
Yeah, you
so the
better believe
value of what's good, they can increase the value, increase the price.
increase the value
Yeah.
because it is valuable. Okay. The DuPonts played a critical role in World War II. And we're going to talk about all the wars that the other families funded, the Rothschilds funded, because that's another way that they made their money, funding wars on both sides. Anyway, that's how they built their banking. That's how they built their banking empire, was funding wars. Okay. Played a critical role in World War II through munitions and later through space age materials for NASA. So DuPont has a lot going on. Strong influence in American industry, science, and politics. Several family members held government posts. Philanthropy includes museums, libraries, and architectural advancements. Do you notice something that's very common with these families? They deal with structure and they're dealing with institutions. They're dealing with places that house information, that house visuals, and this is what we've been talking about. The standard, the emblem is visual. We've been talking about the decree, the scroll that's written. These things are very important in order to direct a people. I ain't gonna read everybody. I got a list. Okay. What about Louis Vuitton and Moet Hennessy? Y'all heard that? That's the Arnold family. They built Louis Vuitton, or LVMH, which is Louis Vuitton and Moet Hennessy, into the world's largest luxury conglomerate by acquiring legacy brands like Louis Vuitton, Dior, Fendi, Moet, Chandon, and Tiffany and Co. Tiffany Incorporation, Tiffany and Co. But Louis Vuitton was a family name all by itself. Do you know that, right? But they transformed luxury into a business empire across fashion, jewelry, cosmetics, and spirits. Now his children run LVMH divisions, making this a modern dynasty known for meticulous brand preservation, exclusivity, and global influence in luxury culture. Ferragamo is another one. A lot of church people, especially pastors, love their Ferragamo. I'm not saying that they're the only people, but it's Italian craftsmanship. Okay, it's shoes. They're shoemakers to Hollywood stars in the 1920s. That's where it started. And so now all of these people are, enamored by Ferragamo. Nothing wrong with it, but they've turned it into an idol in a church world. It's an idol. Okay. Gucci, same. So I could go on and on. Versace, Gucci, Ferragamo. I want to get back to Trump for a minute because he didn't just pop up on the scene. And this is why I'm telling y'all that this is theater. Everything has a purpose. That's it, Elder. Sear and Roebuck. Yep. And they now have acquired all state insurance. Absolutely. Things progress. Only thing that ain't progressing is people that's just going to church buildings and hearing the same stuff over and over again and doing nothing about it when they leave there. They're not being trained. They're not being sent out. They're not being discipled. They're not being given any training on finances or language or anything. Why you going to places and you can't speak the language? Why you been places for 10 years and you ain't never spoke the language? That don't make sense. Why you keep going there and you refuse to come home and put in the work to learn the language so you can communicate with these people? I don't comprehend it. Anyway, Frederick Trump, 1869 to 1918, he immigrated from Germany to the U.S. in 1885, and his initial fortune was made during the Klondike Gold Rush by operating hotels and restaurants. He wasn't in the gold rush. He wasn't going to collect the gold. He just created the space for people to come to eat and to be housed while they were going to collect the gold. Okay. And some of these places were brothels. Don't get it twisted, in Seattle and the Yukon. Okay. Some were brothels. But he returned to Germany briefly, was deported for failing to perform military service. But he landed in Seattle, in Queens. No, I'm sorry, not in Seattle. He landed and settled in Queens, New York, and invested in real estate. This is the foundation for the Trump legacy, for the Trump family. That's not new. This is not a new person. He didn't just pop up on the scene as some rich billionaire figure that created blah, blah. No, there's a legacy behind him. Fred C. Trump, 1905 to 1999. He's the son of Frederick Trump, who is the father of Donald, right? Founded Elizabeth Trump and Son. This is the later what is called the Trump Organization. And he became a major real estate developer in Queens and Brooklyn during the Great Depression and post-World War II boom. I'm telling you, in these times of transition, we're getting ready to go into this transition financially where the reset is going to happen. We got to be properly positioned. Whatever that looks like for you, I can't tell you what it looks like for you. You have to find out what that looks like. You have to seek the Father. You have to go through these things, identify the family lineage, identify the standard, identify the scroll, walk through all the processes and understand why you're here in 2025. What is your purpose? I always see it as the time that I was born in, it was to address what happened right before me and what would happen after me, but definitely what was established right before me. I came to undo it because it was going to affect how the future showed up, right? That's how I look at birth. So I was able to tell somebody I love, listen, you don't understand me because I was born on the verge of black and white and color. I saw black and white TVs. I had a black and white TV, but I was born on the verge of color. I also had color TVs. There's something about my age group, something about my generation that is so powerful. Because, and of course, generations before me, but I'm just speaking of my age group, my generations, because we were born on the edge of innovation, on the, seeing innovation turn. We were born on that edge. Whew. So he built affordable housing, military barracks, and later middle income apartments. He was known for being wealthy, shrewd, and politically connected though he was not flashy. Politically connected, though. I'm not going to go into his political affiliations and connection. You do that in your own time. But understand, nobody sits in the seat of the president by mistake. You just need to understand that, because then you'll better understand the theater of government and the theater of politics, because it is theater. Okay? So I'm not going to go any further with that. Y'all know Donald's history. He took over the business in the 1970s and he escalated it. So it went from affordable housing, the middle housing, to going beyond that, right? Trump Tower, Trump Plaza, casinos in Atlantic City, the whole nine, TV, media, all of that. So when you're looking at these things and you are distracted by the diversion of media and Hollywood and acting and, come on, characters and avatars, you got to get it together. Because as a son, you need to understand what's really going on. I want you to understand one more thing before we move on from that space. Notice the thing that they do. They pass their inheritance to their children. They pass it. They have structure. They have trust structures. They have all kinds of things in place. Major business holdings, how they keep things together, what they put it in, the vehicles that they put it in, how it all fits together. Okay? How they manage their assets, what their role is in that. And if you understand what it means to be wealthy, if you're going in that direction, then you understand own nothing but control everything. That's a thing. Okay? And everything that they do is purposeful. Okay? How they move is very purposeful. It's not by mistake. It's not, ooh, he did that. That was stupid. No, that was purposeful. You think it's stupid, but because you don't understand chess. You might understand, Uno and a bunch of other, but you don't understand chess. And these people have been playing chess. This is why they have legacy like they have legacy. Because they've been playing chess, not checkers. Okay? All right, let me see. Am I going in? How much further am I going in this today? Um, um, we're dealing with the revealing of and the resounding, and this is about the declaration of destiny. It's To me, it's obvious that the people of Jericho heard a sound that shook them to their core, but it was before the physical sound was released on the seventh day. There was a frequency that was rocking their nation, and that frequency was the chatter that came as a result of what had already been accomplished by these children of Israel. And now they are outside of the walls, walking around. They are establishing something regarding the territory, and it's emitting something that's making the people in Jericho very uncomfortable. Okay, so understand that sons frame reality through decree, and destiny is discovered for the purpose of declaration. So I'm gonna give you. We're gonna go to the scripture because I said we were gonna go to the scripture. So we'll come back to our final conversation, our activation, and our decree. We'll come back to that because I want to read a couple of things before we do that. Okay, let's go back to Esther. Let's go to Esther real quick. Sister, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you can say anything you want to say about
Um,
anything I just said, but I'm
I,
going
I
to
just
Esther
know
right now.
that we have to come out of this thing of, well, that's them and that's not for me. We have that. Well, I don't know nothing about that. Well, you can learn that sucker,
You do not because
Yeah,
I said
and
it.
so we well, I don't understand all that stuff, so I ain't worried about. No, you need to get to know it because it has an effect on you, because what they gain affects you, what they give out affects you, what they put in play affects you, because they have gotten the monopoly. They have gotten, basically they have checkmate. So you change
That's it, and it affects you. Let's. I want to clarify this. The you that she's speaking to is the you that's not committed
That's
to the
it.
sonship. Because if you're not committed to the sonship dimension, then
Come
you
on.
are affected by all
Affected
of
and
these things.
infected.
Okay,
That's
affected
it.
and infected by them. So I wanted to
Yeah.
clarify that for y'all because she's not saying it. She's not saying something
Mm-mm.
opposite of what I said. She's saying you will be impacted if you do not. If you are not, she's speaking
But
directly
I'm,
to
I'm gonna
people that are
I'm gonna
not
tell you. Let's
in the
make it real
sonship
plain.
dimension.
I go to simplicity. You don't like the food that they have at the grocery store, but you won't. You have a yard, but you won't go plant it.
Grow your own.
You won't propagate it because you got nails and you don't want to put your hands in the dirt because you don't want dirt to get under your nails, even though dirt is good for you, and it has minerals
Yeah,
and whatnot that you need. And so what happens is you succumb to what their plan is and their
their
authority. That's
authority
it.
into their
And
ruler.
so we have to come out of the mindset of this modern day. Um,
21st century
yeah,
microwave
but
foolishness.
see, we're
Everything
we're
gotta happen
turned
right
into
now.
Ahabs.
Yes, we are.
Now I just say it
Come
like
on
that
now.
because that Ahab spirit is not just male spirit;
No, it's
it's a
not.
spirit.
It's a
Period.
spirit. It's not just
No
a male
gender
person. It's a
attached to it.
spirit. No gender attached.
And we
That's it.
have an Ahab spirit. We just letting everything just kind of ride and go. And okay, we've been the yes men. You know how to say, I'm not a yes person. I'm
Yeah.
not the yes person. Yeah, he is. If you're accepting what they got, they
Yeah.
given, and there is no pushback, and your mouth is closed, and you're just falling, you just say,
Yeah.
well, and I'm gonna say this: after a while, that just pray over it ain't gonna be good enough. Just
No,
pray
it's
over
not
it.
good enough
It'll
now.
be it. That's it. But he said wisdom. He said, let the works of your hands prosper. And our hands have not been working in the right spaces for a while. And so those that are
Hmm.
working in their spaces and creating viable spaces are now in control, and they don't have the same belief, but because they operate in certain things spiritually, those spiritual um, allowances work for them, like faith. Faith doesn't have the saying of
Mm-hmm.
house. Amen. Yes, 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 yes. Mouth closed, no movement doesn't mean I'll protest.
It doesn't. Because people get that so confused. They think, oh, well, we supposed to be out there protesting. No, your pushback is
What you
in what
do.
you do.
That's it.
Your pushback is in you establishing the government of Yah in the earth. Your pushback is in you establishing and setting up systems that are divinely orchestrated and eternally orchestrated so that people can come into that. Your pushback is not about
Ooh,
your protest in
hold on.
public. It's about
Oh my
what
Lord.
you do in
Come
the
on,
silence,
Jesus.
in silence, what you're feeling in
Come on,
silence. Come
Jesus.
on, talk
Yeah,
to me.
you know what? I'm gonna say this. We just went back over into Acts, right? I was just coming out of Acts early this morning, and the very first
Mm-hmm.
verse of that gives key to something, because
Come on.
it says in the last portion of that particular verse, it says, "All that Jesus, which is Yeshua, began both
To do,
to do and
both to do
teach."
and
And there's a
to
separation
teach.
because teaching is the
Yes.
planting and the cultivating, but the do
Come on.
is the
Is the
example. It
example.
is
It's the
it
prototype.
is the experience,
Yes.
and we have to
Yes.
become the experience, not just the verbal teach, not just the proceeding. We have to be the
Living
living
epistles.
epistles. That's it. And so we have to
That's
be
it.
more diligent in how we move. Be he says be wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove. And how is
Yeah.
that? The same thing like a coyote spirit. It befriends and then it takes over. It has
Come
befriended.
on.
A lot of us have been bewitched, not just befriended, but
Period.
bewitched. And we think
Yeah.
these things are good. And one of
Nah.
the
It's
biggest
bad.
altars
It's
that
all
have been set up, even in the body of Christ, is the
mm.
pharmaceutica.
Come
That
on
is
now.
one of the biggest altars
Pharmakia.
that we
That's
have to
right.
take down, because we
Yep.
put more trust in
Pharmakia is
it than we put in God Himself, Yeshua. We don't live like we say. We
no.
bear
We
the
don't live like
words,
we
but
say.
not bear the deed.
Come on now. Come on. Come on. And we're not waiting on the Father
To
or
do
Yeshua to
anything.
do anything. We got to follow the example that was set, and the example that
That's
was set
it.
was
But you
not
have to understand
pharmakia.
the word in order to be able to do that. You have to
Yeah.
understand
It
what
was
is put
not.
inside of you to do that. You have to understand that you don't
Yep.
have to.
What you're not willing to compromise that's inside of you to do that, because when you're entering into those contracts, you're compromising what's
That's it.
inside of you on a DNA level and
That's
a
it.
number of other things.
And it takes a toll. And
You're
most people,
compromising your
and
ability
like
to
it says,
hear
most
from
people
Yah.
don't die from the affliction; they die from the treatment, and that's
Come
the
on now.
truth.
Come on. That's a fact.
That is a
It's a
known
fact.
fact. Go research it.
The body is established. It is built to re-establish, to uh, regenerate. We see that on movies all the time where there's a regeneration. We call that superhero power, but that's what we were given, the ability to regenerate,
Yeah.
to be made
See,
new again.
we have to be
You
more
know?
engaged in what is truly for the body of believers.
Yes.
We can no longer, and then we got to come out of this singatory thing, because everything that was done in groups and not by themselves. Even Jesus did not, or did I say Yeshua did not travel by
Yeah.
himself. He had 12
Even the Father didn't
by
recreate
himself.
by
That's it.
himself.
And so we have to understand no man is an island, and that's a truth.
But that's how the adversary really gets to the
Mm.
people, is he puts them in this singular mindset.
And also
It's just about me.
means
Nobody knows.
I did it.
Yeah, nobody knows. It's isolation for destruction. It's
That's it.
isolation for
That's
destruction.
it.
Because when we talk about the family unit, you got to understand that family unit is there for protection.
Yeah.
It's not about isolation. It's about protection. It's about
That's
interaction.
it.
It's about relationship. It's about relating.
Mhm.
It's about communication. And now the adversary has scattered all of
Yep.
that. People don't sit together and eat. They don't do that anymore. There's no conversation. It's all entertainment. It's all television. It's all phones. It's all anything but
Let me say
strategically
this.
sitting
I will
down.
say this too. We search out these very names that you have spoken of. Check what their beginnings were, their homestead. Their homestead was not just husband and wife and children. There were husband, wife, children, mother, uncle, niece, and nephew on in their compound. They made sure that their
Yep.
homes were big enough to us to able to accommodate. Now we want big houses just to say we got space. And there's nothing there to fill
Come
it
on
up.
now.
There's nothing there to occupy that is appropriate for a house of such
Oh my God.
magnitude.
Wait. Now we want big houses so we can run into our room
That's
and be
true.
isolated.
I can go whatever room I want to
We,
go
we
in.
want we want a sheep pad or a man cave. We want to get away. But
Well,
listen,
I understand.
that
I
ain't God.
understand a
That's
sabbatical
not
place, a
Yah.
prayer room. I understand a
Yeah, that's
prayer
not Yah.
closet. I understand you have a place of sanctuary
I understand all of
that's
that.
in
That
house
ain't God.
that you may be able to go to retrieve to deal with to communicate.
That's it.
But now, but to
Just
deal with
presence is one
worldly
thing.
things, unless it's your office of work,
Isolation.
devices of destruction, if not used correctly. Come on now,
Period. Period. Your isolation
that's
will
it.
destroy you because you're not hearing the voice of the people that are in the unit to
That's why
keep
he
balance
has no
there.
preference of person. That's why y'all don't have a preference of person. Make sure,
Neither
make
does
to
the
make
adversary.
sure you
He got
understand
sense
it
enough
ain't
to
just
know.
about you.
Listen, even the enemy got
Yeah,
sense enough to
and
know
he got a
that.
whole army, a whole legion. Okay,
Oh,
he got folks
mm-hmm.
watching because he can't
Yep.
watch everything. He can't see
He can't. He ain't.
everything.
He
He,
not
yeah, so
omnipresent.
he knows
Nah.
how to incorporate. Even he know the business
Yeah, he knows
structure.
how to. He know how to delegate.
He got
He's
a
got a
business
business
structure.
structure, and he conducting your business
That's it.
where you're not. He conducting your business. Okay, let's go to Esther real quick. That was good, sister. That was amazing. Matter of fact, let's go to Esther. If y'all still being blessed, put a 5 in the chat. Devices are a distraction if not used properly. Anything can be a distraction if it's not used properly. And that's what people got to understand. It can be a distraction. Prophet Marlies, put your 5 in the room in the YouTube room. You putting it in the private chat.
It won't let me get in back into that one, so I just put it in that way. Yeah, it won't
Oh,
let me do
stop it.
private now.
Well, you was just in the private chat. No, you put the 5 in the
No,
private chat.
I can see the chat room, but I can't type into it.
Oh, you can't type into
Right.
the regular chat
Yeah.
room. Okay, you know you have to be on YouTube
So
from
look,
another
look.
device to do that.
Is that Prophetess Vicky? Elder Vicky,
That's
can you
Elder
put a
Vicky,
double
yeah.
5 in there, one for me?
55.
Put a
Put a
55
55 in the room.
up in there.
Put a 55 in the room for
Amen.
sis. Oh, that's a holy
Okay.
number, I promise you. That number
Yes,
means
Lord.
holy. It means holy. That's a holy act. Okay, let's look at this. Esther. So when we look at Esther, right? And we're gonna get off here in a minute because my walk is at 8. I'm not trying to rush, but I want to definitely not overdo the time. But we seem to get longer every week, but this is an intensive, okay? It's an intensive. When we look at Esther, we can see some dynamics here. We see the dynamic of a seizing of a nation. This is another diaspora. We see that a king has captured some folks again. And we see that the king is trying to call a banquet, calls his wife, she don't come. It builds outrage in the whole nation. His counselors, his advisors, people that are close to him say, we can't have this because that's going to mess up everybody. See, we talk about impact, right? I'm showing you impact. If you allow this king, this is going to impact our houses. Because as a nation, how the king is dealt with is going to be dealt with. They said, no, we can't do this. Vashti gonna have to be dealt with because her impact is gonna reverberate through this kingdom, and every woman gonna think that that's a way to do things. So they deal with it, and this gives way, or opens up a way, opens up a door for Esther, Hadassah originally, to come into play. Now, I want you to understand something. When we talk about culture, when we talk about family dynamics and the importance of family and how the blessing is housed and all of that, Hadassah's parents are gone, but her cousin, who is called her uncle because I'm sure he's much older than her. I have a cousin who I call my aunt because she's much older than me, is now um, he's now her guardian. He's now her guardian. And he's teaching her and training her in the things of Yah. But they get to this place, and now there's a call for all of these virgins to come to the castle because the king is now getting ready to replace his wife. He's getting ready to get rid of the old queen because she's broken some things, and the standard has been diminished through her. So now we can't keep her in this position because it will reverberate. This thing will reverberate through the kingdom, just like Jezebel. Her rule with Ahab reverberated through the kingdom till what he was originally put there for didn't even matter no more. It didn't even look like that anymore. So here she's given an opportunity, and she follows the protocol that her cousin uncle gives her, and she also follows the protocol that her person that is over her, her attendant, gives her. While there were other women who were doing other things, and they were allowed to do it, but they were doing other things to try to position themselves, et cetera, et cetera. But she went through all of the protocols. She went through all of the rituals. She went through all of the things that she needed to go through for beautification and purification and all of that to prepare herself to stand in front of a king, right? The point that I want to get to here when I'm dealing with Esther and I'm dealing with the resounding, what the sound of family sounds like, what is it, what is the frequency of it, is the fact that there was a man named Haman who was the king's right hand, right? And he was given some false authority through some information that was passed that wasn't really the right information, but he got access to an authority that gave him the king's signet. So Haman decides with the king's signet, he's going to issue a plot against the Hebrew children. I know it says Jews, but we not into the ish. Jew is just a drop off of Judah, the word Judah. It's created, it's made up, and that's why it's ish. Okay, I'm going to say that every time I get to that because I need you to just digest that for a minute because you got a lot of leaders still really playing into that. And it's a really dangerous place to play into because you got to realize who you are as a Hebrew people. You got to realize that and understand that even whether you are um, generationally or familiarly related, you are spiritually related. So you got to understand that and understand what authentication is and what the reality is. Because just like a son that is um, grafted in, just like a son that is adopted in, he is a part of that family. The crazy part is that the adopted or the grafted in was chosen. Okay. He was chosen, specifically chosen in a family line. Those other ones were just birthed, but he was chosen. And we're talking about naturally, right? So here we go. Um, Haman gets this access falsely, and he becomes one who could also bear the signet of the king. And he begins to issue this edict, this decree that all of the Hebrew children be killed, that they all be killed, that they be eradicated. Okay. Now, the beauty of this is when we talk about impact and how impact is made and the resounding of the familial name, what this sounds like. What does it sound like? What is its frequency? We see Esther with an opportunity. She can decide, I don't have nothing to do with that because I'm already in my space. I'm already doing my part. Or she can say, because of her relationship to the king, I got to say something. And you know what she chose. So when she chose what she chose, it caused her to strategically put some things in place to execute this. So we got to deal with strategy again. She's in the place of authority. She's close to the place of authority. And now she's got to strategize to get the execution of this authority that she's now, this seat that she's now been given. She's got to execute the authority of her seat. And she strategizes through a dinner, something simple, just talking about simplistic, right? Something simplistic. She calls a dinner and she invites the king and she invites Haman, who is his right hand. And in the dinner, she begins to discuss what's really going on. And it uncovers, it reveals. I told you about the revealing and the resounding. She reveals something and then she begins in the revealing to show how some things have been twisted, some things, some wicked things are in operation. The resounding comes when the reality of who um, Mordecai is, the uncle cousin of Esther or Hadassah, who he really is, and then the ring, all of these things get transferred. All of these things get transferred, and then Haman gets dealt with, his sons get dealt with, all of that. But in this transfer, talking about what happens in the transfer, in that space of transfer, in that space of reset. Been talking about that since I've been on the live. That space of reset. Proper positioning is everything for the transfer, right? So the transfer happens. Mordecai is no longer terrorized by Haman. He's not, the gallows that were built to hang Haman and his family are now the gallows that hung Haman and his sons. And now Mordecai, Esther's uncle cousin, has the king's signet. And what does he do with it? You can't reverse a decree because once a decree goes out, it has to be accomplished. But what he did was he wrote another decree. Now you say it didn't get rid of the other decree, but it put something in the children. It put something in, it impacted the lineage in a way that made them strong and not weak. Before they were afraid because of the edict that went out, because of the signet and what it signed. And now they were empowered. So because of this empowerment, they knew that on the day that they were supposed to be eradicated, they were supposed to rise and begin to eradicate their enemies. And this was by signet of the king. I love how this plays out because I can't reverse the decree that was made in my name. However, I can create a new decree that trumps the decree, or that puts in the people that were afraid an empowerment to understand who they are, to come against those that are following the first decree. That's why I picked Esther this morning, because I want you to understand the resounding, the revealing, and the resounding. Okay, so there's something that's revealed. Great. We revealed it. Now we got to understand supernal uh, 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 intellectual property to execute what is eternal, to change the trajectory of the thing that was set against us. I hope y'all got that. My sister, I know you got something to say about that. You there, Marlise? She's trying to get it together. Get it together, sis. You're on. So this is the goal, is to reverse what was decreed against us. We can't do nothing with the decree. That's why the decree don't, it matters for us, for it to be revealed to us. But when it is revealed to us, just like what's happening in the family bloodline, what diabolic intellectual property has come in and imposed its will and its vision and its ideology on the culture of the family. Now, when supernal or eternal intellectual property is revealed, what we're supposed to do to execute that, to reverse the outcome. Can't reverse the decision, but we can reverse the outcome of the original decree that was against us. And so, again, that's why I picked that. Let's look at, I don't know where sister went. Let's look at Deuteronomy 30, verse 19 particularly. Let's look at that. Let's look at that. Because revealing and resounding, this is, again, about declaration and destiny. Okay? It's about declaration and destiny. Positioning is everything. I need you to get that this week. Your position is everything, because the word declares that the Father looked throughout the earth to identify one that would stand in the gap, but he couldn't find nobody. Couldn't find nobody. And again, that is male gendered, but of course we know that that's for the purpose of gender expression, how that works. But then there is the no male nor female part of that from a spiritual perspective. That means somebody got to stand in the gap, right? There has to be an intercessor. And this is why we're teaching this, because you got to understand how to intercede. You got to understand how to intercede. Let's go to Exodus chapter 30, verse 19. We're about to get off of here, y'all. I'm in Exodus 30. I'm typing in Exodus 30, verse 19. Y'all still with me? Thank you to those that are still on. Y'all listening today? You getting something? Let's go here. It says, "For Aaron and his sons shall wash their hands and their feet." No, I'm supposed to be in Deuteronomy. Hold on. I'm supposed to be in Deuteronomy 30, 19. I'm like, what am I reading here? What washing hands and feet got to do with this? I'm sure it got something to do with it, but that ain't what I'm talking about today. I'm not even going to waste no energy to try to go in that direction because that ain't the assignment right now. So let's go to the assignment. Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy. DEU, y'all. 30. I was in Exodus trying to figure out what hand and feet washing had to do with anything. Okay. This is what is stated here. This is that conversation that Moshe has to have with the children of Israel. "I call heaven and earth to record this day against you that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life that thou and thy seed may live." Because this is the resonance that the Father wants to come from the familial line, the life, the expression, the glory of who he is, the honor of who he is. But there are decisions that have to be made. And this is why we're having these conversations, because decisions have to be made about what side you're standing on and what you're going to execute. Okay? Job chapter 22. Let's go there. We're about to get off of here. About to give y'all reflection and some call to action in just a moment. Job 22, verse 28. Let's show it to you again. 22:28. "Thou shalt also decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee, and the light shall shine upon thy ways." So I'm going to start at verse, let me see. I'm going to start at verse 25. "Yea, the Almighty shall be thy defense, and thou shalt have plenty of silver." Now, this is after Job has lost everything. Materialistically, he's lost everything. And so it would seem that his wealth has diminished. But one of the ways that sons are assured that even if they lose things, they can regain a thing is because of their relationship with the Father. And the fact that he doesn't take anything away from us not to enrich us, not to take us further than. Okay, this is the proof of that. "For then thou shalt have thy delight in the Almighty, and shalt thou lift up thy face unto God. Thou shalt make thy prayer unto him, and he shall hear thee, and thou shalt pay thy vows." Do what you say you're going to do, right? "Thou shalt also decree a thing, and it shall be established unto thee, and the light shall shine upon thy ways." Revelation is going to be very clear, okay? "When men are cast down, then thou shalt say, there is lifting up, and he shall save the humble person." Now, I want you to see this real quick because this is really important, because I talked about some of those times where you can't decide whether you're going to go through or not, right? It's not on you to decide that in that moment, because the Father has exposed you to something to try you or to purify you. But what it says here in verse 29, it says that because Job was put in this position, now when men are cast down, his words, he's going to reverberate. He's going to resound to them because of his relationship with Yah and his experience. There is a lifting up. And it says, and he shall save the humble person, because everybody's not going to be humble. When you tell them the word of Yah, when you say the word of Yah to them, everybody's not going to be humble. Some people don't want to hear it. Some people have been impacted by words. And so now, instead of them coming on the other side of the reality that they're no longer in that space anymore, and they're no longer under those things, then they're going to just classify everything and throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's a mistake. You throw out the dirty bathwater. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Prophecy is of Yah. The prophetic is his nature. And it is the nature of sons. Y'all are prophesying every day and don't even know it, right? Here's the thing. It says, he shall deliver the island of the innocent, and it is delivered by the pureness of thine hands. So he went through a whole process. But what he resounded after something was revealed, it resembled eternal dimensions. It resembled that. Romans chapter 4, verse 17. Let's go there. Romans chapter 4, verse 17. Okay. And it says, as it is written, I have made thee a father of many nations. Talking about Abraham, before him whom he believed, even Yah, who quickeneth the dead and calleth those things which be not as though they were. Now, that calling things that be not as though they were is very much so connected to the end from the beginning thing. And so you need to go and take some time, because I'm going to let y'all go. I might bring it up next week. That end from the beginning and calling those things that be not as though they were are definitely connected. Okay? Who against hope believed in hope that he might become the father of many nations. It's definitely connected. We're going to unpack that next week. According to that which was spoken, so shall thy seed be. There's a sounding that's going to come out of the revelation or the revealing of something. You got to identify first what the Father has called you to. You got to identify, definitely have to identify or what's being imposed on the family line. And then you got to be willing to be the divine pivot in the family, to rewrite, to write the scrolls, to become a scribe, a scribal keeper of the things that the Father has given you, and to then begin to resound, to execute via your voice, to begin to communicate what heaven is saying. So these things are, man, I'm so excited about what the Father's doing. I don't know what to do with myself. But remember that sound frames the family line. There is a sound that's coming, just like there's a fragrance that's coming from the family line. And we got to wake up, because we've been asleep. We have not been doing family right. We have not. We got to understand what's in the name. We got to understand how to take the name and to shift it if it needs to be shifted. We got to understand how to position it for the next opportunities that are coming. We got to understand all of that. Okay. And this is why I read you the things that I read you concerning the families and mentioned the names that I mentioned. But I'm excited about this series. I'm excited about this intensive. Again, the focus is sons framing reality through the resounding of what is necessary to restructure and to justify or to reset the family dynamic. Destiny is definitely discovered for the purpose of declaration. And so here are some activations for you. I want you to write 3 decrees over your last name. Okay? If you need to change your name, then you need to change it. Heaven will give you that change. But I want you to write 3 decrees over your last name. And I want you to reverse every curse that has framed your identity up until this point. Here's a decree. By divine authority, I declare the destiny of my bloodline shall reflect the will of Yah. And you can mention the areas. Well, you say in every area, and you can speak specifically to the areas where it is not a reflection. I speak life, legacy, and alignment. Now, here's your prompt for the week. What has been said about your family? You need to know that. What is the ongoing conversation about your family? If you don't know that, then you don't know the enemies that you're dealing with. If perversion is something that is constantly the conversation, and when I say what has been said, you'll know it because it's a repetitive characteristic. I'm not talking about what are people saying about your family. I'm saying what are the reverberating characteristics? What are the things that keep coming up that you keep seeing? If perversion is one of them, then that's one of the things. So after you write what's been said about your family, then you need to write what must now be said about the family. Y'all got that? Write what must now be said. I'm going to deal with the sonship dimension next week when we get into 3. Okay? But I'm going to leave you guys with this today. I don't know if sis is still on or not, but I'm going to leave you guys.
I'm still here.
Okay, you're still there? Okay, did you have anything you want to say? Because I'm about to close
You're
it.
good, because I'm ready for next week now. Because we got a lot to deal with. Ooh, I'm starting. It'll be a whole nother
I
hour
love
too.
you.
So the prophet is subject to the prophet. Amen. So, amen.
Your time liking so Are you sneezing or is your phone just moving?
I think my phone may have moved, but I wasn't sneezing.
Okay. Okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, make sure you like and share. Definitely share it so that we're positioned in the algorithm. I noticed last week we were almost at 100 views. We were at 99 last week's installment. And so let's move that number. Let's move that needle like we did on Periscope. Man, I missed Periscope so much. That was a dynamic platform. I miss it so much. I guess it just didn't, it was too free. It was too much freedom in that. And so they needed to make sure that it was a controlled narrative, more of a controlled narrative. But I promise you, we need to come with some more um, confrontation and some more, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Competition for the things that exist. Anyway, I love y'all. The body's not a me thing, it's a we thing. And I want you to remember that you're blessed. And I don't want you to forget it. We will see you next week. Until that time, shalom, shalom, family.
Shalom, shalom.